We'll go across to our guests shortly, but remember that this is a very historic mission that we have undertaken early this morning, and we are obviously also putting those live visuals up on the screens where you can see the vessel, where we have helicopters on board. And remember that the crew members, after they splashed down, they were safely assisted out of the Orion capsule after it safely splashed down in the Pacific Ocean. The crew comprised of NASA astronauts Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, along with the Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen. I welcome all my guests who are joining us this morning. A very good morning to all of you, and thank you for taking out your time and for speaking to NewsX. Let me start off this discussion with Mr. Nayak. Mr. Nayak, this is a historic moment for everyone across the world. The astronauts have successfully splashed down after that historic flyby.
Really an exciting and news for the whole humanity, and particularly India being a partner of the Artemis Accord. They will get to benefit the sharing of the data from the US regarding the technical as well as the scientific data from US, and which will be useful, tremendously useful for Gaganyaan mission and subsequent missions or human missions of ISRO. So that way, I think it is indeed a great mission, and I would like to add that this time NASA has added some improved features in the whole mission, namely the maximum autonomy in the far side or dark side of the moon when the spaceship was traveling, and there was no communication with the control room. That was a 40 minutes duration, so they had to completely depend upon the autonomous system for navigating and guidance, and that came out successfully after 40 minutes from out of the radio silence zone. And that was one of the things. Second thing is and they got fantastic data on the far side of the moon when they were traveling, like what you can't obtain from a camera, because of the limitations of the camera. Here they got from the human eyes a lot of important data. For example, the subtle colors of the change of the rocks on the moon, only human eye can make out whether it is blue or brown, and depending on that, the minerals depend available on that. So, this kind of a data they could get because of the human mission. And another thing is the re-entry was tremendously risky, being a human mission, and NASA came out with an intelligent way of reducing the G level which the astronauts experience from 7G to 4G. Secondly, the temperature came down, and that was the system of double skip mission, re-entry. That is, first, actually, the Orion integrity comes like shallow angle, something like 4 to 5 degrees, okay, and the upper atmosphere. So it goes back slightly again in the space little bit, and then second time it makes a controlled re-entry at 6 to 7 degree, which is the proper angle. And during that two-stage re-entry system, the temperature slightly goes down, the pressure goes, in the sense the G level goes down, and another thing is the difference actually which they face entering from space to atmosphere, that becomes bearable. And then, of course, they could land using double stage parachute system. And here, when it is right in the entry system, re-entry point, the speed was something like 40,000 kilometers per hour, and that was reduced by two parachute system to 35 kilometers per hour. So gently, very gentle land, I mean, splash down, I could say. And there was a very well tested flotation technique. So they had no problem in recovering the capsule from the sea. And then, of course, now they're undergoing the rehabilitation procedure.
Absolutely, Mr. Nayak. Some very valid and pertinent points you've raised. We'll go through them one by one over the course of the hour. But let me also go across and rope in my other panelists who are joining us on this broadcast. Group Captain Jha. Group Captain Jha, obviously, first of all, very historic mission. And some of the various important points of this mission was how humans have made the furthest space flight, and they are the first one to see the far side of the moon as well with human eyes. And like Mr. Nayak pointed out, there are various observations which will be something that scientists can study for years, which will help research even for our own Chandrayaan program.
Very good morning to you, Shivani, and to all your viewers. They have been watching your program with very high expectations, and I'm sure it will be able to give them many things to think about. Many congratulations, compliments to NASA that they have successfully done everything, right from the launch till the taking out of the pilot from the capsule. Having said that, it's a very complex mission. A flight to moon or a flight to the space, human flight to space, is something, it's a very delicate, very complex, technologically demanding. And I was able to write a book onto the human space missions, the concepts, basically the concepts I had described about 6 7 years back. I had written this book. uh, Coming back to this particular mission, what really has taken place in this is human aboard the rocket in their capsule, what they had named Integrity Orion. In that they have traveled. One thing which is very very important and very crucial is the EC and LSS, environmental control and life support systems. This is a technology which keeps on sustaining every life. Every breath that every person aboard takes consumes oxygen, and when he leaves the breath, he adds carbon dioxide into it and water vapor into it. So that EC and LSS will have to address all these things. Every breath of oxygen taken, every molecule of oxygen consumed has to be replaced by the system. Every bit of carbon dioxide, I'm sorry, has to be again reabsorbed, removed from the environment of the Orion capsule. So is the water vapor. Temperature has to be kept absolutely, comfortable, in the comfortable range. The atmosphere, that micro atmosphere, what we call it, it has got a normal shirt and sleeve atmosphere of one atmosphere that we face here in the Earth. The same is in the Orion capsule as well. And along with that, any particulate, any obnoxious gases coming into it has to be removed every moment to moment that it happens. So with this, the crew had gone. They have traveled to the moon. I expect it is about 2,38,855 miles, about 3,84 kilometers and 400. So that is the distance that they have gone there. And in this attempt, they have surely not attempted landing or anything. They have gone to the far side of the moon, and then looped around, taking advantage of the gravity of the moon. They have used that influence of the moon lunar gravity. So looped around and skirted around the moon, have gone to the furthest point of about 2,52,756 miles. That is the farthest that the people have traveled into the deep space. And then thereafter, they have come back, they have re entered the gravity of the Earth, and through there, what happens, when you keep falling towards the Earth with Earth gravity's pull every moment, the velocity of the Orion capsule keeps on increasing. So by the time they have come for the re-entry, the velocity is in the vicinity of about 24,581 odd miles per hour. That is about 42, 43 thousand kilometers. It is much higher than the normal, when we go to the space for anything like Gaganyaan mission, like ISS. When we go, that ISS is revolving around the Earth at about 17,800 odd miles per hour, about 24 to 27,000 kilometers per hour. Here it is much more than that. So that was the one risk, that when this particular Orion capsule comes for re-entry, the velocity should not be very high. And what Mr. Nayak was trying to mention to you, that the re-entry at that high velocity is very, very crucial. It is split into the
बहुत ही ज्यादा लाभ मिली। कई बार ऐसे होत रही से कि हमन यहीं तक सीमित रहे, यहीं तक अपन बात ला रखे के मौका नहीं दे पाते।
Everything, and I don't know what else to say. I'm just so ecstatic. It's such a wonderful feeling to get to this point. Again, we still have to get the capsule, but this is huge for all of us in landing recovery, and I couldn't do this without my team, and of course the full support of the U.S. military. There's going to be lots of high fives when we get the capsule back in, and I'm so happy that the crew's doing well, Ryan's doing well, and thank you for for everybody watching.
Yeah, it was great to watch the crew come back to the ship with you. How were you feeling when you were seeing them looking so happy to be home and feeling really good?
The funny thing is that we had video of them from inside the Orion. All right, so that was in fact an official of NASA that was present on the vessel that actually took the crew out. So when the crew's capsule splashed down in the Pacific Ocean, they were taken out safely one by one, and there was a vessel that was actually present over there in the Pacific Ocean. It was deployed there, and then they sent out rafts to make sure that one by one the crew is safely evacuated after the splashdown. Group Captain Jha, I apologize for the interruption, but that was in a bite that was coming in live, so we needed to play that out. I'll come back to you and I'll discuss those various points that you mentioned. Let me also introduce Dr. Garudhachar, who is also in fact joining us on this broadcast. Thank you so much, Doctor, for taking out your time. Before we get into the nitty-gritties, obviously a very successful mission for NASA and for humanity. We are seeing a lot of firsts. We are seeing the capsule, which earlier in Artemis 1 faced a lot of problems because of the heat of the re-entry, has made a safe splashdown today, sir.
Good morning. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are, sir.
Yeah, good morning. I would like to say good morning to all of you, my co-panelists, to this occasion. On this occasion, we have really made globally, we have done a very good impact on the space research, space technology and applications. One of the few risks that were faced during Artemis 1 was with respect to the heat shield. So, if I understand, the heat shield is made up of a kind of what we call multi-layer insulation, MLI blankets. So somehow there was an expansion of these layers, and there was a difficulty in Artemis 1, and that was called off. So, but here this time they have made a special improvement, and there is a very successful re-entry. That was one of the reasons, because the temperature what we receive here, what the craft will go through. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are, sir.
Yeah, the temperature that that the craft will undergo will be twice the temperature of the sun, nearly 10,000. If you call temperature, photosphere temperature, it will be 6 to 7, 5 to 6,000. This temperature are much higher, double this temperature of the sun. The other problem, what we are looking for in terms of thermal and communication problem is there is a full blackout because of the dense plasma. In which region the communication will be practically zero. The temperature which the plasma is so large that the communication of the electromagnetic wave propagation will be practically nil. That was one of the tense moments. Now coming back, what do we do next? The craft has gone around, as the other co-panelists very clearly explained, looking at the far side of the moon, where we cannot see, there will be no line of sight. So they probably would have used more of spectrometers to detect what kind of minerals, what kind of land, what kind of terrain is there. That will be useful for our future, our own Chandrayaan mission. And one of the very ambitious plans, which is yet to be confirmed, is to bring back helium-3. Helium-3 is a kind of material which can create, which can be used on ground if you bring it. Theoretically, if you can bring it, 1 kg will give you enormous power. You can generate power for a long time. That's through nuclear fission, which is a very clean energy and there will not be any fallout, no dangerous radiation. That's one of the things which is being looked for. But there is some work still to be completed. Can we use this helium-3 for generating power using in a nuclear reactor? Still work is going on, but this is an impetus, some kind of a motivation to look forward to such missions where if according to some of the estimations made, 1 kilogram of, how do you bring is a different question. If it can be brought, you will save 20 million US dollars equivalent of power. That's the kind of thing that is expected. So we are looking forward to this kind of future missions. And also one of the future in ISRO's missions could be Chandrayaan-4 or maybe later sample return mission. So those samples again will be used for testing to look for various unavailable minerals. They are available on the ground on the earth, but the quantity is very, very large. They say that there's abundant of this helium-3 up to about 1 to 2 meters on the regolith surface of the moon. So all these things are very, very useful for future applications, benefits to the mankind. Thank you.
Absolutely. Doctor, I request you to please stay on with us. In fact, I request all my panelists to stay on with us. So we are just introducing some of the videos that have come to the fore regarding this entire splashdown, how it took place. So we'll show that to our videos, and then I'll come back to you with questions. So let's start off the first video where we see the Orion capsule actually detaching itself from the spacecraft that was present in space, in deep space. When it tries to re-enter the atmosphere of the Earth, that's when it detaches itself. So we'll play that video out for you through and make sure that you understand the entire process of how it detaches and then re-enters the atmosphere, then it deploys the parachutes, and then the crew is safely evacuated from the capsule. So this is the first video. This is a video of deep space where you can see the Orion capsule actually detaching itself from the main body of the spacecraft. Here you go. And this is the period where you see they are also tracking it. That was the NASA control room. and this is how it goes. So, remember that there are around over 30 cameras that have been placed inside and outside the Orion capsule to capture every moment of this journey, but this was the first step towards this. And then you look at these parachutes that were being deployed with the, and that's the touchdown, that's the exact moment when it touches down over there in the Pacific Ocean. This is off the coast of San Diego, and remember that there are around 11 parachutes that have in fact been included in the capsule to make sure that the speed is decreased. Like our guests were emphasizing that it's a lot of speed, it's something that has to be in fact slowed down. Here you have it, the exact moment when the parachutes deploy themselves. There are around 3 that you can see here, but there are 11 parachutes in fact on Orion. That's the capsule over there, and you will see the moment when it actually splashes down into the Pacific Ocean. So, this is the exact moment the parachutes are fully deployed over here. You can look at that on your screens, and then we look at the next sequence, which also show how the parachutes are deploying to make sure that the speed is decreased, because when you re-enter the earth, because of the force of the gravity of the earth, the speed increases, like Group Captain Jha had been pointing out, and this is one of the measures that has been employed to make sure that the speed is decreased while it makes the splash down into the ocean. So, this is inside obviously the Orion capsule. You have a view of how the astronauts and the crew were looking at things. You can look at their module that's in front of them. They are making sure that all the systems are in fact functioning properly. Remember that when it enters the Earth's atmosphere, there is a specific 5 to 6 minutes of blackout of communication. They do not have any kind of communication with the Earth during that blackout phase. So, it is very important that the crew make sure that the systems that they are handling is as per course. So, this is from inside the crew, a visual that has been in fact released by NASA. So, you can look at the crew members over there. We have all 4 of them making sure that the capsule is safely splash landing in the Pacific Ocean. So, these are some of the videos that have come to the fore. You can look at that capsule, you can look at those parachutes, a historic splashdown over there for mankind. So, clearly very historic moments that we are in fact playing out for you viewers on your screens right now, and for mankind as well, for research. This is the furthest that humans have ever gone into deep space, and they have come back. They have seen the moon's further side with human eyes. So, those are the visuals that we are in fact playing out for you. Let me go back across to Group Captain Jha, who is still with us on this broadcast. Group Captain Jha, you were talking about the specifics of how the re-entry takes place, and in Artemis 1, the test flight that was unmanned that went across, they saw that the capsule that we were just playing out those visuals, it faced a lot of burning. When it entered, there were some abnormalities that were witnessed during that flight. So, in Artemis 2, there were a lot of steps that were taken. There were 11 parachutes. They changed the course. You were explaining how they changed the course and they make sure there are 2 skips in the atmosphere, so that the capsule does not face as much of that burning effect as Artemis 1 did, and the shields were specifically designed. So, those are a lot of firsts that were in fact very necessary to make sure that yes, we can send people in space, but we need to make sure that they come back safely as well, and that is the biggest hurdle that manned spacecrafts actually face.
Yes, that's absolutely correct, because that is the main crux of the re-entry mechanism. especially of the human space, phenomena that is happening. Artemis 1, that was the unmanned vehicle, that had entered at a velocity of about 24,581 miles per hour, and the temperature around the capsule went up to 2760 degree Celsius. Of course, it didn't burn the capsule, but that was surely high. And as our co-panelist was trying to mention to you, that multi-layer ablation mechanism of the heat shielding was not very good. Instead, there is a phenolic impregnated ceramic technology which absorbs or which sustains the heat much better, and that is what is usually in most of the re-entry capsules, and that is what was in this Artemis 2 as well. Spica we call it. That is the phenolic impregnated ceramic tiles that they have. That is the mechanism they follow, and this has sustained very well. The moment you make the re-entry into the atmosphere, the friction with at that high speed with the air becomes so much that it is almost like a burning thing, and the temperature goes to, as I mentioned to you, more than 2500 odd Celsius, and that's the condition of what we call it, the plasma. That much of heat is there, and in that heat there is so much of the encapsulations of the entire thing that even the normal communication cannot come out. No data you can get from out of the capsule. And of course, the capsule life support is such that this heat is not permitted to go inside the capsule, because they are the human sitting. They cannot sustain such temperature, but temperature does go up. Within the comfort zone, somewhere around the higher side of it. That is how the temperature also goes. But the moment it comes out, it is the 6-minute phase of the re-entry into which this plasma occurs, in which the communication black is there, and then thereafter, the moment it comes back at those altitude, temperature is very less. It is about minus 50 degree or so. So in that, the moment it comes out, it cools down pretty swift. And then the drogue chute, that first set of parachute, that is the drogue chute to stabilize the capsule. It has got no other role but to stabilize, that it comes down within a given path. So drogue should first come out, and after the capsule is stabilized, the drogue chutes are ejected, and then the main parachute. I think this time they had used 116 feet diameter of the parachute, 3 of them. So they were effective, and that is what you have been showing, that the descent through the atmosphere to the splashdown has been very controlled, and it was a very good, splashdown. It is the copybook type of, the technology that we have seen here taking its course during the descent. And obviously, this was only a 10 days mission. In this, we don't. I'm specialist in aerospace medicine. This is my, bread and butter area. In this 10 days of space venture, we don't expect much of the decomposition to happen in the body system. It does. Under the microgravity, there is redistribution of the blood. A lot of fluid come above the heart level to the face ploughs, and there is circulation which takes care of some of the things. Of course, I don't have to mention it here. But then the other long duration effects of muscle wasting, or the bone density coming down, or any other things taking place is hardly any. It is not there. So this time, when you have seen the crew being extracted from the capsule, they haven't had much of decomposition, and they could be able to walk around normally. Of course, it takes few seconds, because after you are injected into the space, thereafter the microgravity takes effect, and most of the phases of the entire thing, they are in the microgravity, except when the engine again lights up. It gives a thrust for some reason. That time they get push into the seats. But thereafter, the moment engine is silent, they are all under microgravity through all these times. So compliments again to NASA, and congratulations to all the 4 crew. that they have returned back with vast acquisition of the data that will be useful in Artemis 3 program.
Absolutely. Let me introduce another guest who is now joining us on the broadcast, Professor Ram Srivastav, who is a former ISRO scientist. Thank you so much, Professor Srivastav, for taking out your time. A very good morning to you. So, a very historic moment. We were just talking about the specifics of the splashdown. We were talking about how important and significant the Artemis 2 mission is. I want to understand from your perspective, Professor, as per your understanding, what's the biggest takeaway from this entire Artemis 2 mission? Because the Artemis mission plans for a sustained human presence in deep space and human presence on the moon. Now that the mission has been successfully completed, as per you, what's the biggest takeaway, sir?
It will clear up the different obstacles which may come in future while landing the astronauts on the moon. The first achievement is the technology, which is quite advanced one, and it is much better than the Apollo technology. At the time of the Apollo technology, electronics was not so advanced. Communication technique was not so advanced as we are having. The computation of the different data is entirely different. Obviously, the information of the other side of the moon, which is not visible from the Earth, is very fruitful, useful, and the Chinese the information regarding the new element Y is also to be verified for the future use. The biggest achievement is the chances of collecting this helium-3 isotope is very important. In case helium-3 isotope, if the material from the moon is collected, obviously it will create new era for producing electricity from the fusion reaction in the future. Because energy is going to be a big problem in future. At present, we are more than 40%. We are totally depending on coal and oil, and this oil and coal will be vanishing from the earth in 2075. Obviously, for the future, we have to search out new ways for energy, and in that particular direction, the visit of these 4 astronauts around the moon is going to play a new role, and we can have very good hopes for future to create a camp over the moon and study in detail what probable difficulties our astronauts will face on the moon. That is very important, because the surface of the moon, the dust, it is getting charged from the solar radiations, and as soon as you will put up your leg there, sparking will take place. How it is going to affect the human body in 1/6 of the gravity which from the earth. Obviously, there are so many other technical parameters, what they will eat, if you are interested in staying there for a longer time, the camp to be converted into a living room. That can be obtained while primary studies in detail, the soil, the contents of the, at present there are no virus as we are expecting, but in future what will happen when human colonies are to be constructed there, what new problem one can face. It's going to give you one open window for future. That's why, in my opinion, this visit is very important from the space science view.
Absolutely, sir. In fact, let me also go across to Dr. Raju on certain aspects of this mission. Sir, I want to understand from your observation. Obviously, like Professor pointed out, they will study space radiation and the weather in deep space, and it will help us understand how future missions can look like for human beings, how sustained duration of stay on the moon can be. and Artemis 2 specifically carried CubeSats to study space radiation, to study the weather over there. As per your perspective, when we get that data, do you think that we will be able to realign ourselves as to how human beings can look at longer durations or sustained stay on the moon? Because when we look at the International Space Station, for example, the astronauts do face a lot of challenging health problems after a certain point of time. How will we be able to realign the human being per se, in order to make sure that we do have sustained stays on the moon? And I also want to understand, do you believe that this is something that we can overcome?
Yeah, see, again, it's a very, very important there will be some takeaways from this mission. For example, what you can ask, how much of helium-3 can we get on the Earth? Limited. We don't get too much because we have a magnetic shield around the Earth. Whereas on the moon, there is no magnetic shield. So the particles, nothing but emitted by the solar radiation, will get penetrated on the moon's regolith, and this is one of the very important advantages. Now, coming back to health related things, yes, we had a lot of worries when one of the missions where Sunita Williams was stuck in space for more than 300, nearly 400 days. Certainly, we had our own worries about the structure of the bone, how the muscular performance will be affected, all those things. Luckily, as one of the panelists said, of course, this is a short duration, 10-day mission, nothing will happen. But the question of radiation is always there. You cannot prevent, you cannot escape from the radiation that is coming from outer galaxies. And we have to be, that's why we have all the shield. We have our own dress to be made. And this is one important thing which we cannot escape. Of course, there's other problem of debris falling on the spacecraft ISS. ISS is the where you had cases where ISS has people, astronauts, they can clear away from any dangerous debris coming from outer space. But if it falls, one of the examples I have seen shown in the literature is that solar panel is damaged. As there was some risk recently that the debris may damage ISS, they steered the ISS safely towards a region of how to escape from the debris falling. This is a big problem today, even though we are not been able to solve. How do you clean up the space? How do you get rid of this? Question cannot be answered today, though there have been some attempts. They are not successful. Hopefully, sometime we will have this environmental hazard in space, including the radiation, environmental hazard of the debris. Debris is one of for example, one of the satellites where I was closely associated was postponed by a minute. The launch was postponed by 1 minute. Why? Because there was a danger of debris coming and hitting our mission. So instead of 11 o'clock, it was shifted to 11:01. So these are all some of the dangers yet to be solved. Of course, there are amateurs, bigger space agencies constantly monitoring with a very powerful ground-based radars, not only amateurs, huge radars with a diameter of almost 1,000 feet diameter of antenna. They can look at the particles. Today we have the danger of having more than 1 million pieces of debris, junk, more than 1 centimeter. It's an alarming number. A small piece of even 1 centimeter diameter, if it hits the spacecraft, there'll be dangerous consequences. So we have to learn a lot. Of course, we have learned a lot from this, because from the landing site observation on the far side of the moon, future missions beyond the moon, if you want to go to other outer planets, we can think of many people are thinking of establishing a space station on the moon itself because the gravity of the moon is less. So launching from the moon surface needs less fuel. So that is one of the very important takeaways by visiting the other side of the moon. Why other side of the moon? Other side of the moon is expected to have a lot of ice buried in the other side because less radiation of the sun, and future astronauts can have their colonies or their own launch stations where water can be easily extracted. Water can be extracted from the moon surface because we had some very powerful radars on the moon, Chandrayaan 3, Chandrayaan 2 orbiter, which continues even today, which can penetrate to the surface of the moon, and they can discover the presence or the quantity of ice. Once this is confirmed, complemented by the available data today from this mission, we can confidently go for bigger and more advanced missions in the space. This is what I personally feel, and we have got enough data. We have to look at the data available in this 10 days, and landing site has been probably one of the important things we have to take care, because Chandrayaan 2, Chandrayaan 3 took a very, very careful descent and finally landed on the best possible with powerful, sensors. So one more dimension is given by these missions, by these sensors which are on the Artemis 2. Thank you.
Very valid points. Let me take that across to Group Captain Jha as well. Group Captain Jha, Dr. Raju pointed out some very valid points. Experts are now saying that the reason why they wanted to look at the farther side of the moon with human eyes is because human eyes can observe a lot of things that cameras and the systems cannot see. And they also want to do that because they want to use the moon for future missions deeper into space. This is something that is obviously looking at it at a very long term, but this is something that scientists can look forward to now that this mission has been very successful.
Before actually, answering you this question, I just wanted to add few things when we were talking of the radiations at the moon. Look, there are many types of radiations, mostly ionizing radiation that we are very, very worried of. And in space, over the surface of the moon, since moon doesn't have the atmosphere, so it cannot absorb or it cannot remove those charged particles, ionizing radiations coming into surface. There are various types of ionizing radiation that keeps on coming, and the most of all is the solar events. That solar event could be either solar flare, solar winds, solar storms, or mass rejections, CMD, that happens, keeps on happening every now and then. So those charged particles, mostly those are the proton particles that come there. It's very dangerous because it keeps on coming all the time. There is no shield against them, unlike what we have here on the earth. Here we have got the magnetic field and we have got the atmosphere as well. Magnetic field keeps on removing those particles to the another areas. There are two Von Allen belts into which these charged particles, they are kept at various altitudes above the earth's surface, so that doesn't hit us. That is one thing that happens, and that protection is not there on the lunar surface. Other than that, the continuous galactic cosmic radiation, that also keeps on coming, and 87% of those are very, very high energy protons and the alpha particles that keeps on coming there. So they are very, very damaging and people cannot sustain there in that. Besides, every small object, maybe stone, the meteorites, they keep on hitting lunar surface. Lunar surface is full of the ditches and the craters. Because of these hits, it sustains from the cosmos.
Right.
So those things are there on the lunar surface, what is happening, and due to that, the main concern is the radiation and the lack of atmosphere. Now coming back to your question, Look, the back side of the moon that we don't see it there. Look, it's the same thing what happens here. The surface that we see is no significantly different from what is on the other side. Moon also keeps on rotating like Earth. Only problem here is that in Earth we have got 24 hours of the day and night. At Moon it is about 14 days plus of the day and a night. That the equivalent that I'm talking of. It rotates very slowly. So on the further side of the moon also, the sunlight comes up there. Everything is there. Everything that we have on the side facing us is on the other side also. It's only that we don't see it because the rotation of the moon is at the same angle that it goes around. So we keep on seeing every side, the same side every time. Now, the extracting minerals, I suppose we are going to, to the troubled waters. Moon right now, for the billions of years that it has been there, it is in the absolute correct orbit that it doesn't deviate anywhere. Suppose if we keep on extracting minerals and keep on bringing the valuable maybe elements or anything from there, if the weight of the moon decreases, what happens to the orbit stability that moon has? This is a question that the scientists will have to address. That to what extent, how much of the mass you can bring from the moon to the Earth, because the moment moon gets by few kg, it will not. But when you keep on extracting mineral for Earth's economic gain, then there is a concern whether the moon will remain in the same orbit, and if it loses orbit, whether it comes towards the Earth or it goes away from the Earth. In either case, it will be a big loss for the Earth and the inhabitants here in this. So those things people have to see. But then colonizing moon is going to be a tough task. There is no doubt about it, because there is no air. There is no water in the region that you are going to be inhabiting. And even those waters, what has been found in the polar region, it's so contaminated by these radiations that you won't be able to drink it as such. You won't. This has to be processed many times to remove those particles, the charged particles. Otherwise, the person who drinks that contaminated radiated water, they are going to face it. They are going to have a problem. So, scientifically, we keep on talking about this. There is a limitation right now, but maybe in future, when the technology advances further, maybe we may be able to process in such a way that lunar water could be used for some purpose, at least on the surface of the moon. Because living on the moon, every breath that you are going to take, that oxygen that you need, you have to carry from here. Or the lunar, the regolith that we have got, the so-called mud that we have, we call it regolith, that we have to extract the life-supporting elements from that, and for that you need industry. So much of industry will have to be brought up on the moon before we start thinking of colonizing moon. But yes, short stay there is going to be there. As such, during the Apollo program, whether it was Apollo 11, 12, 13, of course, didn't land back. That had to come back. The landing had to be abandoned. But then from Apollo 11 on to about, I think, Apollo 18th, 17th and 18th, they did land there. They spent there almost nearly 7 days or so. Various times, extending up to 7 days. They stayed there. So people can stay there, sustain there with the resources taken from Earth and utilize there in that micro space of the capsules. So all these things are possible. We are looking with the dreamy eyes to the future, wherein there could be a situation when colonization may happen. There are many other things that scientists are thinking of the possibility.
Right. Group Captain Jha, I apologize for interrupting you, but I want a quick last word from Professor Ram Srivastava as well before we take a short commercial. Professor Srivastava, there's another significant aspect to this of free return that everyone is talking about, because that's something that NASA is terming as fuel efficient. Has Artemis 2 mission been able to utilize that free return technology or trajectory that they were talking about?
Okay, it's a controlled trajectory, or it is actually the use of Earth gravity to minimize the fuel consumption while returning. But it's also very risky. And actually speaking, to set our return capsule in the proper orbit is a perfect science. We will have to evaluate its speed, its orientation, its inclination from the Earth plane, and the place where it has to cross the Earth, because on the upper atmosphere of the Earth, if a particular angle is not chosen, then it will be reflected back in the space. So the open window of the atmosphere, its calculation, its estimation, and its penetration is very important. Then comes the problem at the time of entry, because of the friction, high temperature of near about 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit is developed. So in this mission, the outer cover was totally burned, and it was directed to flash over the Pacific Ocean. That is very, very interesting. Obviously, it's a new technology which they have developed and tested successfully. So I hope for the future mission, the data collected here will be very useful.
All right. I'd like to introduce Lieutenant General A.K. Bhatt, who's the DG ISPR. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out your time and for speaking to NewsX. But we are slipping into a short commercial. We'll come back right to you. I thank you, Group Captain Jha, Dr. Raju and Professor Srivastava for taking out your time.
नोएडा इंटरनेशनल एयरपोर्ट नए भारत के नए उत्तर प्रदेश के बढ़ते सामर्थ्य का उद्घोष है। यशस्वी प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी एवं माननीय मुख्यमंत्री योगी आदित्यनाथ जी के सतत प्रयासों से संवरते प्रदेश का स्वर्णिम जेवर है। प्रतिवर्ष 1 करोड़ 20 लाख यात्री क्षमता वाले इस एयरपोर्ट के माध्यम से भविष्य में 7 करोड़ से अधिक यात्री लाभ ले सकेंगे। ये वर्ल्ड क्लास एयरपोर्ट 9 सिक्योरिटी चेक लेन, 48 चेक इन काउंटर, 20 सेल्फ बैगेज ड्रॉप जैसी अत्याधुनिक सुविधाओं से लैस है। उत्तर भारत का कार्गो गेटवे होने के साथ साथ नोएडा इंटरनेशनल एयरपोर्ट एनसीआर में एक और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय प्रवेश द्वार के अनुरूप है, जो उद्योगों को गति देगा, निवेश को प्रगति देगा और उत्तर प्रदेश को समृद्धि देगा।
अगर आप बनना चाहते हैं एंकर या फिर आप में है जुनून एक तेज तर्रार न्यूज रिपोर्टर बनने का, तो आप ज्वाइन करें ITV और इंडिया NewsX का मीडिया स्कूल। ITV नेक्स्ट मीडिया इंटरनेशनल स्कूल का कोर्स आपको मौका देता है देश के दिग्गज एंकर्स के साथ काम करने का। ITV नेक्स्ट मीडिया इंटरनेशनल स्कूल में आप बेहद नजदीकी से देख पाएंगे किस तरह से ITV नेटवर्क के दिग्गज पत्रकारों की टीम दिन रात खबरों पर काम करती है। इस कोर्स के दौरान आप सीखेंगे एंकरिंग की एक एक बारीकी उन एंकर्स के साथ जो देश को रखते हैं हर खबर से बाखबर। ITV नेक्स्ट मीडिया इंटरनेशनल स्कूल का ये कोर्स आपके एंकरिंग स्किल्स को करेगा इतना सशक्त, मजबूत, जिससे आप बनेंगे पत्रकारिता की दुनिया का वो चमकता चेहरा जो दुनिया देखेगी और पसंद करेगी।
We have also promised to the people of Assam that we will invest rupees 5 lakh crore.
In my book, somebody who is elected as an MLA or an MP is elected because he chooses to serve the people and solve their problems.
इसके पहले 2 बार मैंने चुनाव जीता यहाँ से MLA और MP। यहाँ लोगों का घर घर तक मेरा संपर्क है।
विकास के सिलसिले में जो सुनहरा मौका मिला है, इसके वजह से आज दोनों वैली जाग उठा है। वो लोग का साथ मेरा इंटरेक्शन भी हुआ था।
तब ये पता चला जो लोग चाहता है जो एम्प्लॉयमेंट के लिए कुछ करें।
अगर आप बनना चाहते हैं एंकर या फिर आप में है जुनून एक तेज तर्रार न्यूज रिपोर्टर बनने का, तो आप ज्वाइन करें ITV और इंडिया NewsX का मीडिया स्कूल। ITV नेक्स्ट मीडिया इंटरनेशनल स्कूल का कोर्स आपको मौका देता है देश के दिग्गज एंकर्स के साथ काम करने का। ITV नेक्स्ट मीडिया इंटरनेशनल स्कूल में आप बेहद नजदीकी से देख पाएंगे किस तरह से ITV नेटवर्क के दिग्गज पत्रकारों की टीम दिन रात खबरों पर काम करती है। इस कोर्स के दौरान आप सीखेंगे एंकरिंग की एक एक बारीकी उन एंकर्स के साथ जो देश को रखते हैं हर खबर से बाखबर। ITV नेक्स्ट मीडिया इंटरनेशनल स्कूल का ये कोर्स आपके एंकरिंग स्किल्स को करेगा इतना सशक्त मजबूत जिससे आप बनेंगे पत्रकारिता की दुनिया का वो चमकता चेहरा जो दुनिया देखेगी और पसंद करेगी।
A very good morning. You're watching NewsX and I'm Shivani Singh. This is in fact something that we are tracking. Artemis 2 splashdown, something historic, a milestone for humankind. Now NASA's Artemis 2 astronauts have safely splashed down on Earth, completing a landmark mission that carried humans around the moon and back for the first time in more than 50 years. The crew successfully completed a parachute landing in the Pacific Ocean after a high-speed re-entry through Earth's atmosphere. The astronauts were then one by one escorted outside the capsule, after which they were airlifted and taken for examination. Let's in fact take a look at Artemis 2 and its crew who made it back to the Earth, because these are people who are making history, and obviously something that we will be tracking, that splashdown and how it made its way back to Earth. So Artemis 2 returns to Earth. We'll give you a sequence of how it actually came back. So at 11:35 a.m. the crew wakes up. This was their pre-splash day routine. So at 11:35 they wake up. Astronauts begin their final day in space. Mission control plays a wake up song. So a very familiar tune over there, a wake up song for the astronauts. They wake up at around 11:35 for their final day in deep space, the furthest that any human has ever been. Between 1:50 to 3:20 p.m. So after they wake up, after they freshen up, this is the afternoon time when the cabin reconfiguration for the re-entry takes place. So they have to reconfigure the entire cabin to make sure that it's properly set for re-entry back into the Earth's atmosphere. At 7:33 p.m. in the evening, the crew module separates. So this is the crew module, and this part is the service module, which has all the equipment that they were carrying, and this is the crew module, very small, Orion, and this Orion's crew capsule separates from the European service module. So this is the service module that the Orion, the top part, it's triangular in shape, that separates before its re-entry in the evening. Then at 7:37 p.m. the crew module rays burn, and a short thruster burn to adjust altitude and enter an entry trajectory. So, remember when you have to enter the Earth's atmosphere, you have to make sure that they enter at a particular angle and a particular trajectory, and to make sure that they hit that correct one, a burn is raised, and for that they hit that particular altitude and trajectory when this is done. Let's look, this happened at 7:37. Now we are tracking it in minutes. At 7:53 p.m. then the entry interface starts, and the Orion enters the atmosphere at 400,000 feet and 24,000 miles per hour. So, 400,000 feet above the Earth's surface, that's where they make the entry, and their speed is around 24,000 miles per hour. At great speed, that's how they enter the Earth's atmosphere. This happens at around 7:53. We are tracking the minutes, viewers. So, then at 8:03 p.m., so around 9 minutes later, the drogue parachutes deploy. These are the first set of parachutes. There are 11 in total. This is the first set of parachutes. After 9 minutes of re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere, the drogues slow the capsule from supersonic speed. So, we told you that they were entering at 24,000 miles per hour. The first set of parachutes, called the drogues, deploy around 9 minutes later to make sure that this speed is decreased. There are 11 in total. So, next what happens at 8:04 p.m. 1 minute later, the main parachutes are deployed. So, we are getting you those visuals as well. There are main parachutes, 3, they are wider in dimensions than used earlier, and 3 main parachutes deploy, slowing down Orion to around 20 miles per hour. So, these are the 3 main parachutes, wider in dimensions and diameter, and they make sure that Orion's splashdown speed reduces to around 20 miles per hour. And at 8:07 p.m. the splashdown occurs. You can look at the Orion capsule over here. These are the 3 main parachutes that were in fact deployed. This happened in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of San Diego. Orion lands in the Pacific Ocean of San Diego. So, this is where the splashdown happens at around 8:07. So, remember that entire sequence, 7:37 p.m. to 8:07, and we showed you how this entire sequence played out, what were the important components during this entire splashdown. Let me in fact introduce the guests who are joining us for this special broadcast, Lieutenant General A.K. Bhatt, who is the DG, ISPA, and Dr. P.K. Ghosh, Space Scientist. Thank you so much to the both of you for taking out your time and for speaking to NewsX. We appreciate it. Let me start off this discussion with General Bhatt. General Bhatt, obviously a very historic mission, a successful splashdown, a lot of firsts that we are obviously looking at. They looked at a different trajectory of re-entry. They are looking at the Orion capsule with shields that have in fact borne the brunt of the atmospheric burn, which Artemis 1 could not. We are looking at life support systems that successfully performed in deep space. I want to understand, General Bhatt, as per your observations, what's the biggest takeaway? Because we are looking at a lot of firsts, we are looking at a lot of milestones being crossed. But as per your observation, General, what's the biggest takeaway?
So, the journey for returning to the moon after 1972 has begun in earnest. Of course, like you said, Artemis 1 was the first mission, but it is in Artemis 2 that there is a crewed mission, the human beings, which after Apollo 13 have gone to the furthest end in space, and they've gone around the moon and now are back home safely. This sets the stage for Artemis 3 and Artemis 4, and most importantly, Artemis 4, when the first humans will land again in space in 2028 and 29. You know, from the missions which happened during Apollo and to the missions which are now, the distinct difference is that this time the humans plan to stay on the moon. Moon is now being readied to be the gateway for future exploration to Mars and beyond. And very importantly, it is also a base from where we would do much more activities for exploration of space, as well as the resources which we will get from space, be it in terms of energy, be in terms of asteroid mining, and many more things. So this new journey, firstly having a crew staying in somewhere beyond Earth, would happen for the first time when the moon landings do take place and activities beyond that take place.
Open Dr. Ghosh into this discussion as well. Dr. Ghosh, as per your understanding, what's your biggest takeaway? Because like we have been discussing, a lot of firsts, a lot of milestones, but what's the one thing that will stick out from this entire mission?
Good morning. Firstly, I must mention that, as the General mentioned, this is a very big step, because after 50 years, we are going towards the moon, haven't yet landed again. And the future is where we will set up a base in moon, use it for interplanetary travel, etc., etc. Now, whenever I look at all these flights, there are 2-3 things which come to my mind. What do we gain from all this? That is, we are going Gaganyaan, we are going to have Chandrayaan 4 and so on and so forth. How do I gain from the knowledge that the Artemis, we are also signatories to the Artemis, by the way. So what do I gain from these trips? And I think I can gain a lot. Subsequently, of course, I will tell you how much of a similarity that we have. When you were reading out all the various parachutes and all that, I was remembering as to when we recently had our airdrop test just a few days ago, the second airdrop test. And what are the similarities? Oh my God, there's so much of similarity. They used 11 parachutes, we used 10. What are the heights at which we do this? Again, now you said, what are our takeaways? Do you remember that in Artemis 1, many of the heat shield tiles, which are AVCOAT, they burnt away. So there was a big scare in the control center that the entire spacecraft is going to burn. Because if there's no heat shield, and you can imagine if that had happened in Artemis 2, everybody would have been fried inside. But this time they took special consideration. What they did was, they firstly changed the type of entry which they did into the Earth's atmosphere. Later on, if you want, I'll go into a little more detail of how they went about it, what were the angles, etc. But that being a bit too technical, I'm currently not going into, except that they changed it. Now, if the change had been too much, if the angle had been too much, you can imagine what would have happened. The thing would have come straight down, and again, you would have had a burnout. So it has to be correct. Next, all these tiles made out of titanium composite, as I said, they are known as AVCOAT. They're about 1.5 inch thick. They were specifically again designed and kept in Artemis 2 so that this time the heat shield does not give way. Because you can imagine the amount of temperature which it comes through. There is a plasma envelope surrounding it. That's why you have that 8 minutes of terror in which there is no communication with the capsule. It is hurling down and there is no communication. And they are also, you can imagine the G forces that they are facing. So all these things are takeaways for us. What all can we learn from them? I can go on and on because we'll subsequently probably discuss this. Even when they were doing the flyby, they went and started searching for water. Of course, they checked the Basin Oriental Mer, and they checked out on the South Pole, and which was the spacecraft which told them that it was Chandrayaan. Don't forget that we were the ones who told them that, look, there might be water and ice over there. So there are a lot of takeaways for people in India, the space people who are specifically following this, and we have a lot to learn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Some very, very valid points that you have raised over there, Dr. Ghosh, and we'll get into it one by one. We have an hour. We will obviously get into the technicalities of it to just understand how important this is, for humankind. Not just for the crew who were there, not just for NASA, but for humankind as well. General Bhatt, I want to rope you back into this discussion. Dr. Ghosh spoke about how important this is for India. India, like he mentioned, that our Chandrayaan was the first to recognize that and give evidence that there is absolutely, some amount of water present there on the further side of the moon. And we are part of the Artemis Accords as well. So we will get that scientific data, whatever is being, collaborated over there in NASA through this mission as well. When we are looking at our own Gaganyaan missions, there was another aspect to Artemis 2 mission, that there was manual piloting of Orion spacecraft as well. How significant that is for our own Gaganyaan mission when we want to, say for example, look at landing at a lunar, because when you handle stuff from Earth, it becomes difficult. I believe, if my memory serves me right, there was some kind of problem when we were trying to land Chandrayaan on the further side of the moon. And how important will manual piloting then be if this has been very successfully proven in Artemis, sir?
So firstly, I should start with is space, fortunately, apart from competition, is an area of great cooperation between spacefaring nations. And one of the outcomes of that, and which has been taken on, is by the Artemis Accord, where number of nations of the world have decided to cooperate on all aspects of space. And we are also we are a signatory to that Artemis Agreement, as Dr. Ghosh mentioned earlier. Now, what does it do is, all experiences which Artemis 2 has brought in would also be shared by us. And it becomes important, not really for our Gaganyaan mission, which of course, the action mission where Shubhanshu Shukla went, certain insights and inputs have definitely helped. But our mission to have a human being on the moon, on an Indian spacecraft, for that mission to be fulfilled, many of the inputs from here, from Artemis, would be very, very useful. Because like you mentioned, Chandrayaan 1, where we were most successful to find water and detect water for the first time. Chandrayaan 3, which landed on the South Pole, and Chandrayaan 4 and 5, where we proposed to land on the moon, bring samples back from there, and it's a step forward to ultimately having a human being on moon. In all this, insights, inputs, experiences from other spacefaring nations are a great help. Like he talked of the heat shield, what an important input it has been. And because the most important thing for any mission which goes into space is getting your astronauts back safely through that re-entry, which is the most risky, most dangerous thing. And we've known historically there have been times when it has not been very successful. So very rightly, Dr. Ghosh says what is there in it in this whole mission for India. Many lessons, many experiences to be shared, which will help us to successfully do what we aspire to do by 2040 and then beyond. Be there at the gateway when India and the world moves into the Brahmand that is the universe.
Absolutely. So, in fact, let me get in Dr. Ghosh again. Dr. Ghosh, so let's look at specifics. Let's talk about the heat shield. So, we saw in Artemis 1 there were certain problems that it faced, the capsule faced when it was re-entering. They changed the course, they changed the trajectory, they tried to have 2 skips, I believe, then they made it steeper, the re-entry trajectory, so that there is lesser burnout of the capsule. Let's talk about that, and let's also in fact rope in into the same space the free return trajectory, because that's also something that NASA was looking to check if there is a certain spacecraft lost or it loses all sorts of communication or faces technical problems. There is a free return trajectory they have inbuilt. Does that work? Has Artemis 2 mission been able to prove that, sir?
Yeah, let me get into, but first let me congratulate the general. He is one of the main people who's driving from the commercial side the entire space program. So a lot depends on him, because a lot of our startups and private companies are involved in the space. So I would like to really congratulate him in the way that he has been pushing the agenda forward. And all thanks to him. Thank you, General.
Thank you.
Now, coming to your question about the heat shield, let me first tell you a little bit. I just hope I'm not getting too technical, because then, we tend to sort of deviate. We always go towards too much technicality, which becomes a bit boring. So I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. You see, firstly, the heat shield is composed of titanium composite. It is composed of tiles which are about 1.5 inch thick, and they are known as avcoat. Now, we saw that in Artemis 1, what happened was they were trying to do first the sort of the 2 skip, as you rightly said, then they changed over to the 1 skip free return trajectory and all that. In that, essentially, now for the layman, what is all this skip? Let's not get into too technical of this thing. If you throw a rock on a river or a pond, you see the rock goes and ricochets, goes up, and then goes down again. So this is the meaning of the skip free entry, what they were planning. Why were they planning this? Because they found that if the spacecraft comes directly and goes into the atmosphere of the Earth, it heats up much more, or so they thought. And that's why they tried that. But unfortunately, that didn't work well. Why? Because there were gases inside in this heat shield, which expanded due to the heat. And the heat goes up to 2,700 degrees centigrade, almost half the temperature of the sun layers. So you can imagine how hot it is. So they expanded and the heat shield fell through. So that you possibly cannot have in Artemis through with human beings. Now, this time what they tried was, they tried a direct entry, and in which they were very careful as to what is the angle at which it enters. Because if it enters directly, too sharp an angle, it'll go directly through and then it'll crash. Or if it is too shallow an angle, again, what will happen is it'll skip and then it'll go off somewhere else. So now you see, you have to be very careful. So this time, I think they were correct in the angle, and the heat shield was not a problem. It stood there, and the angle was correct, and everything went off well. I hope I've put it in as simple a term as possible and easily understood.
You have explained it very well, but that's the whole point, that bringing back astronauts is the most important thing of any mission. You can, launch a lot of missions to deep space, but making sure that they come back safely with the data is something that all the entire space community looks forward to. General Bhatt, when we are talking about sending people on space, you talked about how moon can become our gateway to the Brahmand. Because the moon has lesser gravity, we can make we can assemble our equipments over there when we send it off into space, and make sure it will require lesser effort, if I can say so, quote unquote, to then explore deeper space. So obviously this is something that we will look forward to, but the important aspect, sir, is how long can humans actually sustain themselves there. And another important aspect of this mission was the the life support systems that were installed inside Orion, and how well they worked, and if they are going to in fact work over there, because we are looking at space radiation. There were CubeSats that were in fact put on Orion to study space radiation and weather over there, to see or understand if sustained human presence is something that we can look at.
So, like you said, the biggest challenge on crewed missions is the environmental life support systems. Because in any mission which is uncrewed, it is, you could say, the degree of difficulty reduces very significantly. I wouldn't put it in terms of percentages, but significantly, because they aren't human beings whom you have to keep safe, whom you have to make survive in that environment. And like the question you asked, how long will human beings be able to stay in the moon? The aspiration is that continuously humans, supported by robots, supported by machines, are able to stay there for longer times. But for whatever stay they do on the moon or anywhere beyond, our planet Earth, the blue planet, it is so special. It allows life to live here. And till now, we have not found any other planet which can do it. So any means to stay on the moon or beyond will be on artificial support systems. The whole environment and the life support system there will have to be created. And that is a big challenge. On moon, the degree may be slightly lesser, but when we are talking of Mars and beyond, it increases manifold. But that said, that is what the aspiration of the scientists is there for the future. That they can create capsules, they can create those crude habitats, a much larger version of what Orion is, multifold times, where human beings can live, do experiments, maybe even go for a holiday, but most importantly, do activities which will help space exploration. There's a big scientific challenge to it. But yes, the way things have been moving, way disruptions in science have taken place, and way the aspirations have been led not only by governments, but by private players. We are well aware that the difference between, again, Apollo missions and the missions now is that there is a strong support of private sector, which is walking in step or shoulder to shoulder in all things which have been produced by them for human beings to go to the moon and beyond.
Absolutely. I, for one, General Bhatt, would be looking forward to a holiday on the moon. But Dr. Ghosh, if I can come back to you with the same question. When we're looking at humans in space and a sustained presence of humans in space, we obviously are studying how humans are reacting to the being on International Space Station, and we have seen how the human body does tend to deteriorate. We are providing the best of our facilities, but over a point of time, we do see muscle loss, we see a lot of problems, we see a reorientation of our circadian rhythm, we see a lot of things happening. I do not, obviously I am not an expert in human physiology, but we do see a lot of changes, Dr. Ghosh. So when we are looking at such sustained presence, we have tested the systems now, the support systems work at least for 10 days. So we now know that we can send across people, but if we look at our presence on the moon, our colonies on the moon that some experts and analysts talk about, is this something that we can look forward to despite the radiations, despite the weather over there, the gravity?
Exactly. I don't know whether I'll be pilloried for this answer or not, but probably I will be, but I'm willing to face this. And, this is precisely one of the areas that I have been sort of looking into at a superficial level. I'm not saying, I'm not a medical doctor, so I really can't give detailed perspective on this. But what little I know, the more I look into it, the more pessimistic I seem to be getting. It's not a very good thing, and I know it, but that is true. When Elon Musk came about, he said, I'm going to send people to the Mars. And everybody talks of the moon, the habitation in moon. You see pictures of people floating around in moon, working. Then there is interplanetary travel to other planets, everything that we as a human being aspire for. But like you rightly said, what are the practical difficulties? And the more I get into it, I realize that in our current state of scientific research, it'll take us a long time to overcome this. For example, you mentioned radiation. Now, the amount of radiation a human being gets if he goes to Mars or even to the moon is phenomenal. It's all right if you go over there for a few days and come back. There is a flyby and there is some landing for a week or 10 days. But beyond that, it is going to be tremendous. Then, other aspect is of gravity. Your organs are not built for the less gravity, this thing. Yes, people say the various medical this thing that are there without gravity, what happens to your heart, your kidneys, everything. They get affected. Other than that, your bones, the mineral leaks away from the bones, they become brittle. So there are so many, and apart from that, the psychological issues. So the amount of problems that are there are phenomenal. So at the current state of science, I am not too sure as to whether we can do it in the immediate future, but obviously science is expanding. We are expanding our understanding of the medical complexities.
Right.
So I do hope that very soon we will have a station in the moon, and then we can go to the Mars, we can have interplanetary travel, though that might take a long time because we have got the hurdle of the speed of light, which is a universal hurdle. Nobody can cross that, as you know.
Right.
So all those are very much there, but the fact is, when will all this be achievable? I think it will take quite a few years for us to do that.
But we've taken the first little small step for mankind towards that, if I can quote the famous words. Well, let me rope in Dr. Shauna Pandya, who is the first female Canadian commercial astronaut. She's joining us for this special broadcast. Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking out your time. An absolute pleasure to have you on this telecast. If I can start off, a very historic milestone, something that all of humankind were looking forward to, and successful splashdown, ma'am. I want to understand, what's your biggest takeaway from this entire mission?
Yeah, wow. First of all, thank you for having me. And what a moment. What a moment in history. What a mission. You know, this was as they said on the live cast, this was a textbook mission from launch to splashdown. You know, there were a lot of very tense moments, especially with re-entry, with the planned loss of signal. You know, these things are planned, but they still lead to tense moments. Humans are fragile. And I think the biggest thing, this was a technical feat. This was further than humans have ever gone. This was the first time back to the moon in 54 years. But the most striking part of this mission that I think captivated the entire planet was the fact that no matter how far we go, and in the most extreme of environments, we are uniquely human. And the emotionality of the moment, and the beauty, and the joy, and the sorrow, every one of those elements was present in this mission, and being able to witness that in real time and experience it with the crew was incredibly special. And I don't know about you, but as a space lover, I've been walking around with a big smile on my face all week.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Dr. Pandya. I think you pointed out a really human aspect to this entire, I mean, we have been discussing since the morning the technicalities of it. But Dr. Pandya, it was a very historic mission when we look at its diverse crew. When we look at those pictures or those selfies that were actually coming through, because that is a first. No other astronaut was actually sending out selfies with the Earth. And you know, we saw the exact spot where Carol was named. That stirred a lot of emotions on Earth. So obviously that is something that the entire world was also not expecting, but it has in fact you know, got the world together on this front.
Absolutely. I think a lot of us expected to be impressed by the technical feats. This was the first time that SLS launched carrying a human payload as its crew, or as its payload en route to the moon. We saw the successful launch of Artemis 1 a few years ago, and we saw the successful test flight of the Orion capsule. But to prove the capabilities of the closed loop life support systems, to have successful procedures, the successful integration of the intravehicular activity suits, that's kind of what we all expected, was to be impressed by the technical feats and sending humans further than they've ever been before, and doing a lunar flyby and capturing geologic features that had never been seen with the human eye. But these special moments, you know, that we all didn't expect, the thrill of seeing that launch of the SLS rocket, the beauty of the crew's words when they surpassed the Apollo 13 record, the solemnness of the moment when Commander Reed Wiseman named Carol after his wife, his late wife, as you said. All of these just were incredible moments, and really touched us to the core. And so I think the biggest reminder, you know, is, and even every one of us here in 1G can be reminded that at the end of the day, you know, in 1G, in microgravity, we all have to look out for each other. And that was just such a poignant reminder.
Absolutely. And Dr. Pandya, if I can also bring out another aspect, which is the first female, you know, being there in deep space. You're a female yourself. You're the first female Canadian commercial astronaut. How do we, you know, move forward from this? There are a lot of firsts, but what's next for us?
You know, I think this is just the beginning. This was a test mission. Artemis 2 was proof of concept for some of the technical features we just talked about. None of the follow-on missions, Artemis 3, 4, 5, could have happened without the success of this mission. And so there was the, you know, the proof of concept from the engineering and safety aspect, but from a human perspective, I think a whole generation of astronauts was born this week. Whether it's the children who might become the STEM professionals of tomorrow, future engineers, pilots, explorers, scientists, and astronauts, or even, you know, fully grown adults like myself, who just, this really strengthened our commitment to do whatever we can to further human spaceflight, to further the science of human safety and human health in space, and to help us as a species go further than we've been before.
Absolutely. And also, Doctor, when we're looking at this entire mission, obviously the aim was to see if there can be sustained human presence on the moon, if we can see or look at the moon being a launch pad for our further deep space explorations as well. You talked about the life support systems, how they worked very well. So as per your understanding, what were the biggest technical takeaways when we are looking at this entire mission?
Yeah, if we take a few steps back and look at the whole purpose of the Artemis missions, we're not just sending humans back to the moon to visit, we're going to stay. And so that entails furthering surface operations on the moon, establishing a permanent human surface presence on the moon, and then also using the moon as a test bed for Mars. So this is just a springboard for the beginning. So every single tick box that went right, this week really does set the stage for success for the future. And then to your earlier point about the diversity of this crew, this was the first time a non-US nation had gone to deep space, and that happened to be Canada, which is incredibly exciting. But we're also in this point in history, which I think is the most exciting time in human spaceflight, because we're seeing more human exploration in spaceflight empowered than before. We're seeing India and the Gaganyaan program do incredible things. We saw the successful flight of Group Captain Shivanshu Shukla with Axiom 4. And so, this should be inspiration to any nation with a planned human spaceflight program, that this is just the beginning. There's many opportunities for exploration, for science, and doing so collaboratively in order to do hard things in space.
Right. And two final questions, Doctor. One is about, the manual piloting system that was first tested on the Artemis 2 mission, and how important it is for astronauts like you to have a manual, override, knowing that, yes, you can control the spacecraft when needed. And also, what are the things that you will be taking to your own journey when you go out in space, ma'am?
Yeah, to your point, there were several key piloting moments that were really critical to future Artemis missions. So we saw with the initial injection into orbit around the Earth that Victor Glover, the crew pilot, planned a planned near docking maneuver as the SLS left Earth, and then the crew took turns piloting en route to the moon. And so all of that is the human interface with the hardware of the Orion module. All of that is critical, and those are all data points for future missions. For myself, I'm going on a suborbital spaceflight profile, so my mission is focused on the research. And as you may know, my research institute focuses on both human health and physical sciences. So when I fly as early as the end of this year or early next year, we will be focusing on key priority areas in women's health, neuroscience, health technology, and the physical sciences. And the idea is that the insights of what we gain from these research projects, these studies, will help inform the future of humans in space, possibly in deep space and on future Artemis missions, but also using those insights to deepen our understanding of what we know about disease states on Earth. So we hope to do a lot of good both up in space and on Earth with our work.
I wish you all the best, Doctor, and thank you so much for taking out your time and for speaking to NewsX. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Let me also introduce another guest who's joining us on this broadcast, Group Captain V.N. Jha, former director of DRDO. Sir, I welcome you back to this broadcast. We have General Bhatt with us as well, and Dr. Ghosh, who we have been discussing these technical, how the space craft actually landed, what were important, and the basic overall objectives of this Artemis 2. Group Captain Jha, so when we're looking at the free return trajectory, that's something that you were talking about earlier as well. We were talking about space debris. Do you think that this is a system that could be implemented to reduce space debris? Because once things are done, we can maybe call them back. I do not understand the scientific mission behind this, but can we do that? Can we implement a free return trajectory to these systems that we send into space and then we can bring it back?
Oh, surely, surely. There is a very good possibility of free return back from the lunar gravity into the Earth's gravity, and that was demonstrated in this flight as well. But before this, I was listening to Mr. Ghosh, very elaborately mentioning about the effects of the gravity onto the human. While in Indian Air Force, I had done a specialty called aerospace medicine way back in 1982-83. Those days, our knowledge of space were very limited to us. And that is my specialty that I have been dwelling in the Air Force for about 29 odd years. Before I joined the DRDO as a scientist. And in 2012, we had a meeting with ISRO scientists for developing the EC and LSS, that is the Environmental Control and Life Support System for Human Space Program. And for nearly a year, we had very brainstorming sessions about the possibility of the designs that India could follow. And in that effort, I was trying to show you my work. That was the concepts in the human space mission that I had founded therein. And there, you have got the vast ocean of the challenges that you face vis-a-vis what we have seen here. Now, coming back to what right now the Canadian, scientist was telling us, she is going on a suborbital mission. That's the totally entire different ball game. It's just that she is going to the edge of the space, and from there she is coming back. From there, a step further is going to the orbit. Living in the orbit is another challenge wherein continuously you face the microgravity, and in the lower Earth orbit, it takes about 90 odd minutes to make a complete round, and you see the sunrise every 90 minutes you see the sunrise, and you have 45 minutes of the night, 45 minutes of the day, nearly approximately. That is how you are orbiting on. And then there's a plethora of health related effects. But coming back to Artemis, Artemis, the moment it entered the highly elliptical orbit after being injected into it, and then it took one slingshot, and then it was put into the trajectory to the moon. Thereafter, you are into the microgravity. You enter the sphere of the lunar gravity. Therein, you make a sling pass. That is very crucial. At what altitude, how much above the lunar surface you make that loop around, that will dictate how much of the deviation you obtain it there. Space science is something wherein usually we work backward. We have the landing back to the into the ocean splashdown as a given time, and then we work out the entire phase, what will be taking off there in that. So in that slingshot around the moon, you dictate at what altitude above the surface you make a slingshot, how much of the lunar gravity affect you to put back into the trajectory towards Earth. Now, after you leave the lunar influence gravity area zone, and then you enter the Earth's gravity back. That is how it is dictated. But there could be a small deviations into the computed, the data. What happens? Lunar gravity is not uniform all over. There are the mass comps, there are the higher gravity area, there are the lower gravity area. So when you make the slingshot, there is usually there is a need for fine tuning your trajectory thereon. So you must have heard here in this particular Artemis program also that after they left the lunar gravity zone, then there was a 19-second of the burn of their engine to put it back to the trajectory where it was intended for. And that is how it is there. Usually the velocity is much less. Yesterday morning, I was watching them, there was a media interaction with the astronaut through the NASA. I was watching them very keenly, and this particular Orion has got very limited space for the four astronauts. It was a cramped up space. I had seen them; they were sleeping initially, and they had the food. They had some freshening up, and then they came before the media. I was watching all these things, so I was just wondering, you know. This particular Orion is meant to carry the astronauts from here to the moon, and subsequently after they carry on their duties and then they start coming back to the Earth's surface. That is what it was meant for. But Shivani, there's a plethora of difference between landing and going around. When Apollo 13 had landed up there, it had landed after a vast research exploration of the lunar surface for finding us a plain area where it should land. And finally, when Apollo 13 went for the landing, just about 100 meters above the surface, they found that what they had assumed that it is a flat surface, it is not. And then to avoid those ditches and the craters, they had to maneuver themselves to find a small space where it is absolutely flat. So those challenges are going to be there, and in any lunar landing, including our Chandrayaan 2, we have seen it there. There is a challenge. Now, in this area, there is a slight bit of difference between landing on Mars and landing on Moon. On Mars, you have got atmosphere, thinner though, into which the drogue chutes, parachutes, they can maneuver you. You have the maneuverability.
Yeah.
While descending through the atmosphere, Mars atmosphere. But here there is no atmosphere. So you can't deploy any chute. Here you have to burn your engine. You have to maneuver yourself within a given paradigm of the parameters that you have on that. So these are the challenges what is going to face into the Artemis 3, because it is supposed to land there. And all those memories of Apollo 13 will surely come here into this, and those maneuverability has to be there. You were talking of, that lady was talking of the maneuverability of spacecraft.
Right.
Look, from the SpaceX experience that we have seen, everything is computerized, but yet we always keep pilot in loop. That is the term what we use. When everything is computerized, you still keep the pilot in the loop, so that at any given juncture, if your computerized system misbehaves or malfunctions, then you take over the control. And that is why in every sortie, in every launches, we have got the pilot, we have got the co-pilot who take over the commands or the flight of that particular spacecraft. So this is a genuinely built system with the pilot in loop, that all these systems will be there. There will be vast changes in the technology of what was there in Apollo 13 and what is going to be in the Artemis 3, because automation is the order of the day to day, with some amount of AI also coming into it.
Absolutely.
Which will look after this. So, many compliments to the NASA and all scientists that they have gone into it, and congratulations to the four astronauts who have gone through it, and many congratulations to the two pilots, the commander and the pilot, who have assumed the control of the spacecraft, maneuvering into those trajectory manually. So that experience would be very useful in Artemis 3.
Absolutely, Group Captain Jha. In fact, I want to introduce some more information that's come our way. Let's take a look at the mission objectives of Artemis 2, because that will help us understand how much have they been able to achieve, what were they going to do, why did this mission actually take place, and if they have completed it or not. Those 10 days, let's look at those historic mission objectives of Artemis 2, which has come back. Now, the first mission was to demonstrate crewed or SLS Orion launch and deep space flight. So this is a new system, the SLS launch system that they were testing out. It's the heaviest that's there, and they also wanted to test the Orion capsule with the life support systems that were present, if they can support a crewed mission. and how this heavy SLS rocket can actually propel a spacecraft into deep space. So that's the first mission that has been completed. Let's look at the second mission, to test the Orion life support and systems with humans aboard. So that's obviously completed. We have safely seen the crew come back. They have managed to survive in deep space and take a fly around the moon in 10 days, and those life systems worked perfectly. Let's look at the next objective, which was perform the lunar flyby and far side observation. So one of the most important things was to observe the far side of the Earth with human eyes, because we have photographic evidence, but to observe that and to do a flyby, like Group Captain Jha was pointing out, to do a slingshot in a certain trajectory, that has been completed. Let's look at the next mission, which was validate crew sustenance and return to Earth safely. How will crew survive in deep space? The food, you're looking at hygiene, everything has to be taken into account when you're looking at a sustained presence of human on the moon. That mission was tested and completed. Let's look at the next mission, which was gather hardware performance data for future mission. Obviously, this is something that NASA keeps testing hardware. They tested on Artemis 1, on Artemis 2, they had better equipment, they had better hardware, they had better software. They tested it out, their performance, how it performed with crew on board in deep space, the furthest that a human being has been, and that was completed. Let's look at another mission objective, which was to break the human distance record from Earth. So this mission is also completed, this objective is completed. We have reached the furthest that human beings have been to. The next mission is exercise ground systems and recovery operations. So when a splashdown happens, how you are going to recover that. We talked in detail about how trajectories had to be changed, and see that's how the Orion capsule actually re-entered the atmosphere, how the recovery is done. All of that has been tested and completed. So the mission objectives of Artemis 2 successfully done, and this is what everyone was hoping for. Let me in fact also rope in General Bhatt into this discussion. General Bhatt, one of the most important things was photographic data that Artemis 2 was collecting, or the geographical observations that were coming into the picture. We had around 28 cameras on board Artemis 2, with a handheld outside the craft, inside the craft. But apart from that, the most important thing were the 4 sets of human eyes that were actually observing the surface, the far side of the moon with absolute precision, with something that cameras or data cannot in fact capture. So General Bhatt, a quick answer on how significant these photographic data will be.
So, like you said, the best thing when we have to explore moon, and especially the far side of the moon, is to be able to see it with the best instruments from as close as we can, and of course the human eye. The outcomes of this will really take a little more time to come when this data is analyzed and combined with the human interface. But what an opportunity to see that side of the moon which has been rarely seen by human beings, get a human perspective which is far above whatever any machine see. And all this has been achieved, and some of the photographs which have come do give you a different perception of the moon. But beyond what human eyes can see is what do we get from this data which all these sensors and instruments have been, and the cameras have been able to get from the far side. This will be really valuable for the next step, that is for Artemis 3, 4 and 5.
All right, absolutely. Let me in fact also get in a last word from Dr. Ghosh before we slip into a short commercial. Dr. Ghosh, one last word before we break off for this commercial about this historic mission.
I would like to end on a very light-hearted light-hearted statement in which you mentioned about the hygiene aspects, etc., which was one of the objectives. Well, that was not really achieved because their washrooms gave way.
Don't worry about it.
Right. We did a report of a burning sort of a smell that was coming in from.
And even they didn't have proper drinking water, apart from, of course, a lot of the walls, etc. Did, but I mean,
overall,
Shivani, US is used to it. US aircraft carrier Ford. It had us stopped. It had all its toilets already full.
Absolutely, sir.
The people were over there. And the moment this Orion was injected into the capsule, the first complaint we received was there was some small malfunction about the, hygiene and toiletries area. And they are taking the recourse to it.
Right.
And could be the recourse, we use the diaper. So now I've got the four people startup there in the diapers and all those disposals being stored somewhere.
It's going to be hell of a smell.
You will have the feel of it.
Absolutely. Well, on that light note, I'll thank all of my guests for joining us for this historic discussion. Thank you so much, General Bhatt, Dr. Ghosh and Group Captain Jha. We always appreciate it.
नोएडा इंटरनेशनल एयरपोर्ट नए भारत के नए उत्तर प्रदेश के बढ़ते सामर्थ्य का उद्घोष है। यशस्वी प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी एवं माननीय मुख्यमंत्री योगी आदित्यनाथ जी के सतत प्रयासों से संवरते प्रदेश का स्वर्णिम जेवर है। प्रतिवर्ष 1 करोड़ 20 लाख यात्री क्षमता वाले इस एयरपोर्ट के माध्यम से भविष्य में 7 करोड़ से अधिक यात्री लाभ ले सकेंगे। ये वर्ल्ड क्लास एयरपोर्ट 9 सिक्योरिटी चेक लेन, 48 चेक इन काउंटर, 20 सेल्फ बैगेज ड्रॉप जैसी अत्याधुनिक सुविधाओं से लैस है। उत्तर भारत का कार्गो गेटवे होने के साथ साथ नोएडा इंटरनेशनल एयरपोर्ट एनसीआर में एक और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय प्रवेश द्वार के अनुरूप है, जो उद्योगों को गति देगा, निवेश को प्रगति देगा और उत्तर प्रदेश को समृद्धि देगा।
अगर आप बनना चाहते हैं एंकर या फिर आप में है जुनून एक तेज तर्रार न्यूज रिपोर्टर बनने का, तो आप ज्वाइन करें आईटीवी और इंडिया NewsX का मीडिया स्कूल। आईटीवी नेक्स्ट मीडिया इंटरनेशनल स्कूल का कोर्स आपको मौका देता है देश के दिग्गज एंकर्स के साथ काम करने का। आईटीवी नेक्स्ट मीडिया इंटरनेशनल स्कूल में आप बेहद नजदीकी से देख पाएंगे किस तरह से आईटीवी नेटवर्क के दिग्गज पत्रकारों की टीम दिन रात खबरों पर काम करती है। इस कोर्स के दौरान आप सीखेंगे एंकरिंग की एक एक बारीकी उन एंकर्स के साथ जो देश को रखते हैं हर खबर से बाखबर। आईटीवी नेक्स्ट मीडिया इंटरनेशनल स्कूल का ये कोर्स आपके एंकरिंग स्किल्स को करेगा इतना सशक्त, मजबूत, जिससे आप बनेंगे पत्रकारिता की दुनिया का वो चमकता चेहरा जो दुनिया देखेगी और पसंद करेगी।
Hello and welcome to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Once again, this week, we're taking a look at this round of state elections. We have reporters and analysts who are here joining us on the show today. So we are getting a ground zero view from Kerala, from West Bengal. We will also be joined by someone from Tamil Nadu. And of course, we also have, they're all analysts and columnists. So we have a view of what is happening pan-India also. Joining me on the show today is Sayantan Ghosh. He's and the author of Battleground West Bengal. He's just come out with this book, very well-timed book that gives us a very much needed insight into the politics of West Bengal, and also Mamta Banerjee. I also have with me Anand Kochikudi. He is the editor of the Kochi Post and a columnist. And if you've been following Kerala elections, then you have to read his columns. He's been always giving us a very insightful view of what is happening on ground over there. Shortly, we'll also be joined by Sumant Raman. He's a political analyst based in Tamil Nadu. But Sayantan, I'll begin with you first. You know, West Bengal is really the most feisty election of this battleground Bengal, as you call it, of this season. Every day there's a new twist and turn. So as of now, what is the mood? And is Mamta Banerjee comfortably ahead as she was in the beginning of the elections?
I thank you for the invitation and pleasure to be here. And yes, West Bengal is fascinating in terms of election and politics. But now, whether Mamta Banerjee is coming out or not, now in if you check Twitter, you will see that everybody is giving an opinion poll. Now, it will be difficult for me to exactly bring out an opinion poll. But what I can say that the yesterday, as the 90 lakhs voters' name has been deleted, this data has come. That's the final SIR. Now, I believe that this puts arithmetically, arithmetically speaking, Mamta Banerjee to back foot arithmetically. But as far as chemistry is concerned, I think Mamta Banerjee is on the front foot. Uh, so this is the situation. Why I'm saying this arithmetically, of course, if you believe that majority of this 90 lakh voter were Mamta's voter, and then if their names has been deleted, then it will directly affect Mamata. But what I believe is that it will not happen chemistry wise like this, because I there are several families who were also Hindus, okay, who are Hindus and whose names have been cut, of their family members' names have been deleted. I know, as far as the person who drives our car, he's a staunch BJP supporter. His his wife has been fighting, like working day and night to make her name included in the voter list. But adjudication did not happen and her name is deleted. Hindu woman, okay? The entire family is angry with the BJP now. Okay, I'm not generalizing it, I'm just saying there is an anger against this SIR. So, which will, of course, help Mamta. And also, I think just the way in 2021 happened, you will know that there are several reports to suggest that the majority of this deleted name is Muslims, minorities. Also, women. So I believe there will be a massive consolidation of the remaining minority votes towards Mamata Banerjee. So these two factors are there.
So interesting. The SIR move may actually boomerang against the BJP, you're saying, you know, the way it's been conducted. It's interesting. Good twist in the whole election narrative. Anand, Kerala is all set to go to vote as we speak, you know, in 2 days' time. Tomorrow, in fact, are the elections. So what is the mood on the ground? Is the Congress able to hold this advantage, or will it do another Haryana, as some people fear, and lose a winning battle?
Hi, Priya. Thanks for having me. So it looks very clear that the Congress is very much ahead, although some poll surveys are suggesting that it's a very close fight, although it doesn't seem that way sitting here. I don't know, for some reason, it's probably the fact that the left has 100 seats, 98 seats, sitting seats. So a lot of people are wondering how they can be reduced to a margin, and the Congress and the UDF from 40, they have to at least get to 70. So I guess that is the kind of calculation that's going on, but it's not an entirely seat by seat thing. I see that in North Kerala there's probably going to be a huge difference in the entire the electoral map, because it's where the left has traditionally dominated. Districts like Kannur, districts like Kozhikode, Kasaragod. So the anti-Muslim, the Muslims have turned against the left in a massive way, and the Christian minorities who, some part of them deserted the UDF in the 2021 assembly elections. So the UDF has fixed all that, and its house is in order. So the minorities are backing the UDF. What I only doubt, or what I only suspect, is the possibility of some polarization among the Hindus to this minority consolidation behind the UDF. That is, if that happens, that that can create some kind of issues. But even in that scenario, I don't see the UDF losing, or coming down to a 2011 situation when they won by just 2 seats. I think that the UDF is comfortably ahead, even if the poll surveys are, the poll of polls suggests that it's only a tiny lead.
But Anand, the very, the narrative that is building is the LDF is being portrayed as the Hindu party. How is that happening? What is the logic behind that?
No, the LDF has always been the Hindu party of Kerala from 1957. If you look at the numbers, the LDF has been, the Hindu party. The BJP was not a phenomenon until a decade ago. In 2011, the BJP's combined vote share after contesting in 140 seats was 6%. So a party that polled 6% in 2011, they can't be called the Hindu party. It's only in the last 10 years, after the the ascension of Narendra Modi as Prime Minister, that the BJP started growing to this level in Kerala. So the left has always been the Hindu party in Kerala. The minorities generally consolidated behind the UDF. The left tried, Pinarayi Vijayan tried social engineering to get a block of the Muslim community to back the left. That was because of the growth of the BJP. He knew that some of the Hindu the sections that were backing the left, they are going to the BJP. So he wanted to compensate for that, and to compensate for that, he tried social engineering. He appealed to the Muslim minorities, and the Muslim minorities, because of the fact that the BJP was ruling the center, they wanted a strong chief minister, somebody who could withstand the pressure from the center. And in 2021, Vijayan branded himself as Captain Vijayan, and a lot of people, they were actually fascinated by that. And the minorities, a section of them voted for Vijayan. Of course, there was the post-COVID situation. There were other issues. The UDF was not a house in order. Ramesh Chandra's candidacy had some issues, all of that. But this time they seem to be very united for some reason, for some strange reason. They are all waiting for the election to be over for the spoils of power, I guess.
No, in fact, it's very interesting to see what the Congress has actually managed to get its house in order well in time. Of course, the real battle will begin once, as you said, for the spoils of power. We are also joined, as I said earlier, by Suman Raman. He is a political analyst and columnist based in Chennai. Suman, the situation on ground in Tamil Nadu, because the polls say DMK has an edge, but TVK's role is could actually turn it around also in favor of a ADMK and TVK election. Where do you see it going?
Yeah, I think that there has been a change in the last 2 to 3 weeks on the ground, and we are seeing quite a distinct difference in the voter perception. Part of this is also because the TVK, except in a few constituencies, does not seem to be a serious player at all. And in fact, the social media is full of memes and ridicule about the way they are clueless about how to go about electioneering. So as their vote share comes down, the AIADMK and the NDA's vote share goes up, because they are then seen as the only alternative to the DMK. There is anti-incumbency on the ground. And it is true that until maybe about a month or month and a half ago, the DMK was clearly out in front. We've had about 5 or 6 polls, quote unquote, opinion polls. But out of which the earlier 2 or 3 of them showed a big majority for the DMK. But the ones released in the last 3 to 4 days, at least 3 of them are now showing a win for the AIADMK. So I think it's going to be interesting. And anybody who says that they can confidently predict at this stage is just talking through their hat.
But did the Congress play it right then, the decision not to align with the TVK, or even the flirting with the TVK? Have they messed it up, or were they,
Oh, they messed it up. They messed it up big time, not just with their, with what they did with the DMK, trying to sort of threaten to go with the TVK and so on. But their candidate selection has also been pretty awful. They announced their candidates only 2 days before the nominations were supposed to be closed, and also there's open infighting. There's open infighting within the party in the public domain, where they put a candidate from a constituency called Melur, which is near Madurai. The person apparently has originally hails from there, but he doesn't live there. He's got nothing to do with the constituency, and the Congress leaders are aghast, saying that how this man was once an MP from Kanchipuram, which is a good 400 kilometers away from Madurai. The second part is they've brought in a candidate from Kerala, who is the head of the CSI, secretary of the CSI South Kerala Church. He is not from Vilavangod. And they have asked him to contest from there because they feel that will help them get more votes in southern Kerala. So, I mean, it is to win even 10 seats. Last time they had 18. This time, if they win 10 seats, they really are going to be extremely lucky. The Congress and the DMK's allies are getting routed. How badly the DMK itself does, that remains to be seen.
So then this whole grand alliance the DMK did may actually work against it, but it's given away too many seats.
Yes, I mean the VCK and the VCK chief Tirumavadavan, 4 to 5 days later, he said, no, I'm not contesting. And worse, gave away the seat to a member who was not even a member of his party, a member of the Congress party. So it is completely bizarre what is happening. And opinion, the DMK, Premlata Vijayakant, that is a massive overestimated kind of a share given to them. So there is a lot of discontent in that alliance. So I think that what we are seeing on the ground is a consolidation of the gone to the TVK had this man actually campaigned. Every other day he gives an excuse. He says that no, they are not allowing me, not giving me permission to campaign. They gave me only for 1 hour. I asked for 3 hours. It is ridiculous. So he's just not stepping out. And Mr. Stalin and Mr. Edapadi are on the road for the last 3 months. So I think as the TVK vote share starts to implode closer to the poll, I think that's good news for the NDA.
Good news for the
NDA, for AIADMK.
For AIADMK, correct. So that's interesting, actually, that last comment that you made. I'm going to take a quick break and come back and keep the conversation going. So stay with us. Hello and welcome back to our roundtable. Today we're taking a look at the ongoing state polls, and Sayantan, West Bengal is interesting because here we also have the BJP, trying very hard to win the state. They've been, focusing there. They've been also, employing various tactics. We spoke about the SIR revision a while ago. But what about the narrative building that they're doing? They're not targeting Mamta. They've realized just like Modi has a credible goodwill throughout India, so does Mamta. So attacking her does not make sense, right?
So BJP has several tactics in West Bengal this time. One part is that they are targeting the governance a lot. They have come up with a charge sheet against Mamata Banerjee government, and they have around 10 charges, etc. So that they are saying they are targeting the governance, not
the person.
Mamata. Yeah, because you remember that last time Mr. Modi did that Didi, oh Didi, and all these kind of statements. So those things went against BJP. And also what BJP is trying to do, they are doing district-wise campaign. In every district, they have their own leaders. Okay, they have given responsibility to one leader who is at the same time making like working as a bridge between the Sangh and the BJP, and also going door to door, keeping the campaign fully very micro level. So these kind of things are happening with the BJP on the state. Now, coming to the success of this strategy in West Bengal in general, if you see, uh, it happens a very personality cult centric voting in West Bengal, because here the face matters. Mamta's way of campaigning is that from every 296 seat, I am the candidate. Okay, so this changes the equation. This makes the equation macro. So Mamta wants a macro level election, larger kind of an election. BJP wants a micro level election. So that's the situation now, because if BJP keeps it macro, then what happens? The language, the outsider narrative, you are seeing that this fish. I yes, last time I told you that the people are
Yeah.
campaigning with fish. So all
Because
this
Mamta
kind
is
of
saying that once the BJP comes to power, you will not eat fish. It's a vegetarian party. That's quite a funny kind of.
yes, exactly. So if you take this statement, you will see Mamta Banerjee is targeting the larger picture, not a micro picture. So BJP is, that's why BJP's strategy was the district wise micro, but Mamta is continuously attacking the macro image of the BJP, and that's why BJP is getting puzzled. They are sometimes doing fish campaign, sometimes doing illegal immigrant Bangladeshi campaign. So this is, and till the election happens, this will go on. Okay, BJP will try to attack Mamta in micro level governance, and Mamta will try to make it a larger Bengali centric issue. So this will go on now.
The war of the narratives. But Anand, let's take a look at the spoils of power that you hinted at. If, as the opinion polls and as you're also saying, is that probably the UDF is, heading towards a win. If that happens, then the Congress has to now decide on the chief ministerial face. I've been seeing various opinion polls. Satishan is really ahead with Shashi Tharoor a very distant second. There is no mention of KC Venugopal at all, but usually it is that dark horse that gets the trophy. So what are you hearing on the ground?
Well, VD Satishan is the leader of opposition, so naturally he should be the the natural choice. But it's very unlikely that he'll become chief minister. That's the fact. He has never been a minister, and he is quite junior to the others. They are actually of the same age, Venugopal and Satishan, but Venugopal has been a minister. He has had ministerial experiences in the center as well as in Kerala, and the fact that Ramesh Chanitla is also around. So I can think of two scenarios. The first scenario is where BD Satishan and Ramesh Chanitla, because they are going to be elected MLAs, unlike Venugopal, who is sitting in Delhi. So they come to an arrangement like Karnataka, or VD Satishan agrees to be a deputy or a home minister or a finance minister, and to serve under Chanitla, who has been a minister. I mean, he was a minister in 1986, 40 years ago. So he's that senior, although he's only 70. So that is one possibility. The other possibility is that if they cannot come to an agreement, then it goes to the High Command, and the High Command will always choose KC Venugopal, depending on the fact that whether Rahul Gandhi is willing to leave, to send KC Venugopal back to Kerala. And KC Venugopal seems to be very keen, because he has been campaigning. He has been, the way he has been campaigning, he is doing all that for something bigger than just the UDF coming to power in Kerala. It's evident. So, a lot of people in Delhi would rather see KC Venugopal leaving from Delhi and be gone from there forever. So I see that's a very distinct possibility.
Third is, I don't know, you can confirm it for me that when the MLA's candidates list was given, it had mostly people who KC Venugopal were promoting, and Rahul Gandhi then said, no, the list should actually be equal and, let others also get their people in. Who had the fair share of MLAs in the list?
The thing is that VD Satishan doesn't have a faction of his own. So after he became leader of opposition, he has managed to groom some people. He managed to get some of his loyalist tickets, especially in the Kochi seat where his loyalist, the DCC president of Ernakulam, managed to get the ticket ahead of KC Venugopal's nominee. But if you look at the list, that's true. KC Venugopal has the maximum number of loyalists on the tickets. But it's also a fact that unlike the past where, the factions, Umman Chandi faction, Ramesh Nitra faction, they would just share the list. One faction will come up with one list, the other faction will come up with the other list. So unlike that kind of practice, this time every seat was taken into. They discussed each and every seat, so it was trashed out like that. So although KC Venugopal does have the advantage when it comes to the list, it cannot be said that that they were just sharing the MLAs. That would be untrue, but it's true that KC Venugopal has the largest number of MLAs supporting him in a post-election scenario.
Okay, so that can be explained if they do a sort of an election. At least they can justify the elevation if that happens. But Sumant, having said we discussed the role of DMK and Congress, how do you see the equation going further? If whether they win or they lose, there has been that mistrust between Rahul and Stalin. There has been a breach of cordiality, should I say, cordial relations.
Yeah, of course, there has been a breach of cordial relations. In fact, Rahul Gandhi is yet to. I mean, they've said that Rahul Gandhi will hit the campaign trail in Tamil Nadu after the now that Kerala's electioneering is over. But as of now, there is no definitive details available as to how many meetings he's going to address, how much of campaigning he's going to do. And very clearly, his loyalists like Manikam Tagore and Jyotimani, the two members of parliament, are very clear. In fact, Jyotimani went as far as to say this is not Rahul Gandhi's candidate list. I mean, how much more clear can it be than that? She actually said, "This is Talaivar Rahul Gandhi in Vetpalar Pattiyal illai," which in English means this is not Rahul Gandhi's candidates list. So I think clearly the party is split down the middle. On the one hand, you have the hardcore DMK loyalists like the state party president Selva Perendagai, P. Chidambaram, his son Karthi Chidambaram, and so on. Who are very clear that the party must only sink or swim with the DMK. And on the other hand, you have all the other the rival groups, and those groups include, surprisingly, a large number of Congress workers who feel, quite clearly that this alliance has not been fair to the Congress. They want a share of power if the alliance wins. Now, what on earth could be wrong with that? The DMK has said no. They've accepted just a mere after haggling for almost 1 month and almost bringing the alliance to a breaking point. All they got was 3 additional seats, and now a whole lot of unwinnable seats which they have been dumped on them, which they are extremely unlikely to win. So I don't know whether there was a strategy, and if so, what they have gained out of it. They have now antagonized the DMK. The DMK cadre on the ground is furious.
I see.
They are going to do their bit to sink at least half a dozen of the Congress candidates. There is no doubt at all. Mr. Stalin can take the moral high ground and say, no, we will do our best to help. But on the ground, even the ministers and the MLAs are extremely angry with the way the Congress has handled this whole thing. Virtually threatening them until the end. And one of the other reasons is they feel that because of the threat of Congress pulling out of the alliance, they were forced to accommodate the DMDK and provide 10 seats, a party which has got a 0.5% vote share, right? So I think that, they are angry with the Congress for multiple reasons. And I think that this will be reflected in the number of Congress candidates who get elected. But on the ground, there is a gradual realization that perhaps, maybe it's time for a change. And I think that realization is sort of, and that mere realization would have not meant anything, because it would have meant a split vote because of Vijay. But with the sort of decline of Vijay, particularly in the last 1 month, increasingly it's now a two-horse race, except in maybe about 15 seats out of 234, where TVK may make some inroads. It's now a two-horse race, DMK plus versus AIADMK plus, and slowly the momentum is shifting.
AIADMK. But then Congress really has nowhere to go, because they have, they could have, maneuvered, before the elections. Now they are stuck with DMK, sink or swim, even post-elections. ADMK is not going to take them.
No,
TVK
ADMK,
is the non-starter.
AIADMK would have been quite happy to take them if this had happened a year and a half ago.
But
Before
now,
they aligned with the BJP, the AIADMK was perfectly open to it. EPS was very clear. He said, come hell or high water, they will not leave the DMK. And he was proved right. In fact, he mentioned it very clearly. He said, look, we can say whatever we want, but they will not leave the DMK. And when push came to shove, he has been proved right. So that is the problem. It's not that the AIADMK, actually AIADMK and Congress are natural allies. They were alliance partners with tremendous amount of success during MGR's time and the early part of Jayalalitha's time. It was only later on that the Congress started drifting towards the DMK. So they're both centrist parties. They don't indulge in hate politics. They're not very ideologically committed. So that way it makes them perfect natural allies. Unfortunately, Congress has this habit of making wrong decisions time after time.
I know that is, well, let's see what happens, and perhaps maybe the Congress will hold on to the state of Kerala, but the other states we will revisit that statement, because the Congress really has to learn from its past. But for now, thank you so much, Suman. Thank you so much, Anand, and the on again, off again Sayantan for this conversation. Thank you.
अगर आप बनना चाहते हैं एंकर, या फिर आप में है जुनून एक तेज तर्रार न्यूज रिपोर्टर बनने का, तो आप ज्वाइन करें ITV और इंडिया NewsX का मीडिया स्कूल। ITV नेक्स्ट मीडिया इंटरनेशनल स्कूल का कोर्स आपको मौका देता है देश के दिग्गज एंकर्स के साथ काम करने का। ITV नेक्स्ट मीडिया इंटरनेशनल स्कूल में आप बेहद नजदीकी से देख पाएंगे किस तरह से ITV नेटवर्क के दिग्गज पत्रकारों की टीम दिन रात खबरों पर काम करती है। इस कोर्स के दौरान आप सीखेंगे एंकरिंग की एक एक बारीकी उन एंकर्स के साथ जो देश को रखते हैं हर खबर से बाखबर। ITV नेक्स्ट मीडिया इंटरनेशनल स्कूल का ये कोर्स आपके एंकरिंग स्किल्स को करेगा इतना सशक्त, मजबूत, जिससे आप बनेंगे पत्रकारिता की दुनिया का वो चमकता चेहरा जो दुनिया देखेगी और पसंद करेगी।
Terms of what defines beauty, what defines health, are we getting as a one size fits all? Everybody going to look thin in the same way? What kind of impact will that have? Not just in terms of our health, in terms of the sociological impact, the psychological impact on all the Instagram reels that we keep seeing.
It's not thin which is beautiful, it's healthy which is beautiful. Everybody's struggling with that last 4, 5, 6 kilos.
Being thin or being slim or being fit is the ultimate status symbol, because it's not something that can be bought. It's something you have to work for. Saying you can never be too thin or too rich.
You have to be BMI 27 with problems or BMI over 30 with no problems. But it's also because of the kind of dresses they wear. Pehle to wo ghagra pehante the ya sari pehante the. Now they are in these tiny little things. And
what we women want at these times on NewsX.
Hello, I'm Belly Thomas and I'm covering the 2026 Kerala elections for NewsX from Thiruvananthapuram.
Hi, my name is Brian Anthony Thomas and I am covering the very 2026 West Bengal elections from the very Cooch Behar seat.
am Ranik. I am covering 2026 Bengal election for NewsX from Nandigram.
Hi, I am Anand Singh and I am covering 2026 Kerala elections for NewsX from Wayanad.
Hi, I am Nibir Deka and I will be
A very good morning. You're watching NewsX and I'm Shivani Singh. We're looking at the top developments from the West Asia war. US and Iran are moving towards crucial peace talks even as tensions remain very high. Iranian delegates have already reached Islamabad while US Vice President J.D. Vance is currently en route for the talks. A temporary ceasefire is in place, but both sides continue to accuse each other of violations, raising concerns of fresh conflict, and the Strait of Hormuz remains the biggest flashpoint, with Iran restricting ship movement and impacting global oil supply. Now, the US has warned of possible military action if talks fail. Iran, meanwhile, is demanding sanctions and greater regional control. With tensions rising in nearby regions like Lebanon, the situation remains fragile as the world watches these high-stakes negotiations closely. With that, in fact, let's take a look at the key delegations of this entire, in fact, peace negotiations that are currently happening in Islamabad. This is something that we will look at. These are the probable names that are coming to the fore regarding the names of the delegations. So, in the Islamabad talks, as these have been touted, the US delegations, who are these people? The leader is Mr. J.D. Vance, who's the US Vice President, and the members of this entire delegation are Steve Witkoff, who's the special Middle East envoy of the United States. We have Jared Kushner, who is also the senior advisor, and we have Admiral Brad Cooper of the CENTCOM. So, we have a military person in place, we have a senior White House advisor, we also have a special Middle East envoy along with the Vice President, which is leading the talks. So, what are the main objectives of the entire delegation which is flying to Islamabad? The first one is ceasefire durability, the second is sanctions, and the third is regional security. So, they are looking forward to meet these three objectives: that the ceasefire holds for a longer duration of time, that if there are sanctions in place, what are the objectives of the sanction, and all the parties have to agree to it. And they are also, in fact, looking at making sure that the there is regional peace in this entire region. Let's look at the Iranian delegation, because this is also important. They are, in fact, also flying towards Islamabad for the talks. The leader will be Mohammad Ghalibaf, who is the Parliament Speaker. So, we had had reports earlier in the start of the war that the US was in negotiations with Ghalibaf for certain terms. So, him being the leader of the Iranian delegation goes on to say a lot. Let's also look at some of the other members who were part of this Iranian delegation. The first is Abbas Abrashi, who's the foreign minister of Iran. So, you have the foreign minister, in fact, accompanying the Parliament Speaker. You have Ali Akbar Ahmadian, who's the secretary of the Supreme National Defense Council. So, you have a member representing the Supreme Defense Council as well, Ali Akbar, and we also have Abdul Nasser Hemati, who is the central bank governor. So, you also have an economic a person with an economic perspective joining the Iranian delegation, because remember, Strait of Hormuz is wreaking havoc on global economy. The Iranian rial had been devastated just before this war. So, that's an interesting perspective that is coming to the fore when you're looking at the Iranian delegation. What's the main objectives for Iran? Let's look at that. Lift sanctions. They do not want any sanctions. That's what the delegation will talk about. Enrichment rights war preparations. So enrichment rights, like they have been talking about civil peaceful use of nuclear energy, they will be talking about the enrichment rights and also the war reparations that have happened. So they will be seeking some sort of compensation from the warring factions and US withdrawal. So they also want to see a withdrawal of the US forces from this entire region. So these are some of the objectives that the Iranian delegations are carrying with them. We talked to you about what the US is expecting. Let's in fact open this up with our guests who are joining us on this broadcast. Ambassador K.P. Fabian, former diplomat, and Mr. Sanjeev Srivastav, who's a foreign affairs expert. Let me first start off with Ambassador Fabian into this discussion. So this is obviously a big relief for the world. Something on the ground is happening. We are seeing negotiations. There are delegations from both the warring factions who are in fact making their way to Islamabad. So this is the first big step towards making sure that there is a durable ceasefire in the region. Do you believe that when we listed out the objectives, do you believe that these are objectives which will be somewhat acceptable to both the parties, sir?
Morning, Shivani. Thank you for that well-formulated question. The short answer is that, these are all what one may call the opening gambit. The Iranian desiderata, what the Iranians want, which you listed, and what you listed as Americans are seeking, these are the opening gambits. There is a lot of, give and take in such matters, point number one. Point number two, Iranians are good chess players. They do not expect America to agree to wind up their bases in the region and all that. Point number three is that there is an elephant in the room called Netanyahu, who wants the war to continue, to resume and to continue till October, when elections are due in Israel, so that his ideal will be having a ceasefire 2-3 days before the election date, project himself as the war hero, and get voted back to power. So that is where it is. Now, Iranians had put out two conditions, as you also mentioned. One is Lebanon, that is the war on Hezbollah. Well, actually it is Lebanon. It is people of Lebanon who are suffering, not only Hezbollah. And the other is frozen assets. Now, Iranians said that these two had been agreed to. Well, we do not know. But to cut it short, both Iran and Trump want a settlement. But the elephant in the room, Netanyahu, does not want it. And latest polls in Israel, as carried by the Times of Israel, show that Netanyahu's political ground is slipping. That is, if elections were held tomorrow, his party will not be close to the majority, and the party opposed to him, consisting of the far, far, far right, they will be nearer the majority, and either side would need the support of others, including the Arab parties, to form a government. Now, I don't expect any Arab party to support Netanyahu. So he is in a bit of a difficult strait, and also, the judicial proceedings against him, corruption charges going back to 2019. He has been postponing the proceedings. Now they are to start tomorrow. Today is Saturday, they have to start on Sunday. So let us see.
Absolutely. You have brought out some very pertinent points, Ambassador. I'll take that across to our other guests on the panel as well. But let me introduce some piece of information that is coming our way regarding this talks. Multiple media reports suggest that Iran may have used decoy aircraft to transport its delegations to Islamabad for high-stakes talks with the United States. Now, the reports claim only one aircraft carried the actual negotiators amid fears of a potential attack targeting the delegation. Mr. Srivastava, very interesting perspective over here. The Iranians, these are as per reports, though unconfirmed, but there are multiple media reports stating that the Iranian delegations may have used decoy aircrafts because they fear for the safety of the delegation. And we have been seeing since the start of the war, there have been targeted assassinations throughout. If one rung of leadership crops up, the US and Israel make sure that they are eliminated and then the next coming. So the decentralized structure of the Iranian regime has in fact benefited because of this. But when we are looking at this delegation, Mr. Srivastava, they are afraid. They put in decoys in place because, like the ambassador pointed out, there is another party to this entire war, and the biggest party, which is Israel. They started this war, they started the airstrikes, but they have refused to join the ceasefire talks. And we saw that banter between the Israeli official and the Pakistani minister as well, which goes on to show how Israel is quote unquote not trusting of Pakistan. So, Mr. Srivastava, how do you look at these negotiatings or these Islamabad talks then progressing further if one part of the warring faction has not come to the table? How can you expect the hostilities to stop?
Well, Shivani, first of all, a very good morning to you. Good morning to Ambassador Fabian sir and to all the viewers. I think these talks are going to be very crucial, very significant. And as I've been saying that wisdom appears to be prevailing now. And it is hoped and also it is so significant not only for the people of Iran and also for people of Israel and the West Asian region, as well as the people across the world when they are facing a severe energy crisis because of this. All of them would be wishing and praying that these talks succeed and wisdom continues prevailing in these negotiations too. And I think United States of America also wants to see this succeed. And on the other side, Iranian side too, would like to have a respite of from this kind of hostilities, and they have suffered enormously. And United States of America and Israel, they have decimated and destroyed and a lot of Iranian Islamic regimes capabilities and resources, and whatever they were having on the surface, all of them have been destroyed. So I think Iranian imperatives are also very much there to see these talks succeed. And I think whether Speaker Kalibov or Foreign Minister Arakchi and other leaders, top leaders, would be willing to go ahead with this talks with a constructive approach and with the approach that they will come out with some win-win formula. And similarly, if the United States of America has chosen to send its vice president, and that is very significant for these talks, that is quite understood that what kind of a seriousness America is giving to these talks, because vice presidential level delegation is one of the topmost delegation other than the presidential delegation. Just after presidential, this is very significant. So I think both the sides are giving a lot of importance to it, and international community also wants to see it succeed. But as far as Israel is concerned, I believe that Israel has its own considerations with regard to this, and they do not trust Pakistan. That is quite clear. The kind of exchanges you saw between Asif Khwaja and the Israeli side reacted harshly to the comment made by Asif Khwaja. That shows that what kind of a deep mistrust Pakistan and Israel have with each other, and that is one of the reasons why this venue was not suitable for Israel to come, because even Pakistan does not recognize Israel even at this point of time. But Pakistan's role, I would also say, that has been that of a messenger, and they are playing that role that should be recognized, but not more than that, because I think that venue, Islamabad venue, is one of the venues, I believe, which is there in these talks. And I also often say that this is the beginning of the end of this war. And this is the beginning of the negotiations to end this war. And that beginning has been made in Islamabad. That is good. But there may be some other venues too when Israel joins it. And I believe that Israel will have to join it because
right, Mr.
let me
Srivastava.
say
So
very
the beginning,
clearly.
so this is the beginning of the talks that you say, the beginning of the end of the war. We have some information coming our way. According to reports, the US delegation led by Vice President J.D. Vance is likely to press for the release of American detainees held in Iran during the upcoming talks in Islamabad. The issue is expected to be a key demand from Washington, alongside broader negotiations on ceasefire terms and regional security. Ambassador, if I can come to you again on this, how important do you think this demand of the US will be during the Islamabad talk? Because we, like you mentioned, apart from Israel, another thing that is missing from the Iranian delegation is the presence of a senior IRGC personnel. Now, how important is that, sir? Because the IRGC is someone that maintains the law and order in the country. The Besiege force comes under, in fact, that IRGC, and they are the people who actually, do those detentions. And how significant will be this demand if the US is looking to secure the release of these detainees?
Thank you. Now, about IRGC, the fact is that the speaker who is leading the delegation was earlier an IRGC commander. So I don't think it is a problem if Iran wants to, release the persons you had mentioned. But I want to make a point about, did you say that Israel has refused to join? And I also want to say that I agree entirely with the good points made by the Sanjeev Srivastava. But he also said that at some point Israel might have to join. Now, maybe. But my take is different. Diplomacy is the art of the possible. And at this moment, I find it difficult to conceive the Israeli and Iranian delegations, certainly not in the same room, but not even in the same building. That is what the situation is. And next point is that if President Trump decides, he decides, and Netanyahu will have to fall in line. Except that I want to sort of add a caveat, and that is, it seems Netanyahu has a clout over Trump. I'm talking of the two individuals. And of course, traditionally, not always, but often, the relations between Israel and the United States has been a case of the tail wagging the dog. I repeat, the tail wagging the dog. But there have been instances when President Reagan made a phone call to Prime Minister Begin when Israel was bombing Beirut, probably 1982 or so, and asked him, why are you doing this Holocaust? So Begin was sort of, shocked. How can anyone talk to him about Holocaust? Because his family had died, But Reagan insisted, and he said, stop it. And within minutes, the Israeli cabinet met and they stopped it. So it is not always the tail wagging the dog. The dog can also control the tail.
Very interesting perspective over there, Ambassador. We have some more inputs coming our way. Let me introduce that to our viewers. According to reports, Iran has demanded that transit fees through the Strait of Hormuz be paid in its national currency. The move comes after Tehran blocked the critical waterway, turning the strait into a major flashpoint in the ongoing West Asia conflict. Mr. Srivastava, if I can come to you on this, we have obviously seen US President Donald Trump, outright reject the idea of Iran charging a toll through the Strait of Hormuz. But this is something that reports are stating that Iran wants the toll to be paid in Iranian riyals. We saw just before this war, sir, that Iran was facing a dire economic circumstance. The Iranian riyal was falling, and there is in fact a banker as well on the negotiating table. How significant is this development? Do you think that this is something that the US will look at agreeing to?
I do not think so, because US, if agrees, then it will be also a kind of a clear acceptance of the violation of the international maritime laws, UNCLOS, United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea, and many other such customary laws which have been established over the decades. That will be a total violation of such laws. And I think international community will also not approve such kind of measures being imposed on international waters. And what will happen to the state of Malacca then, and the state of Gibraltar, and many such other naturally built point where the countries of those regions might impose their own taxes, and this kind of money making business will be made. So I think that will be a clear violation of the rules-based order, and especially the maritime laws will be violated. I do not think that that can be approved. I do not think that United States of America is going to approve, and that is one of the maximalist points which being proposed by the Iranian side. But and it is like the same points what they are saying, that the entire US base should be moved out from the Middle East region. So these are the maximalist positions, and this open gambit, obviously, this beginning of this negotiations. As I said, it's the beginning of the end of this war. So a lot of extreme and maximalist positions are being put forth by both the sides. But I do not think that any kind of approval can be given to this kind of proposal which the Iranian side is making, and I think that will not be accepted.
Mr. Srivastava, according to you, you put forth a maximalist view or demands, and then you try to find a middle way for negotiations. All right, we have some more information coming our way ahead of the ceasefire talks with the United States and Islamabad, Pakistan. Iran has claimed that its preconditions for negotiations have been accepted by Washington. Now, this is a statement that has come from Iran's embassy in South Africa, even as Tehran continues to insist on key demands, including the unfreezing of assets and a ceasefire in Lebanon before the talks proceed. Ambassador, if I can get your observations regarding this, when we talk about the objectives, the most important point that everyone seems to forget is about Lebanon, which south of Lebanon is seeing complete and utter destruction right now. The Lebanon president is supposedly going to fly to the US to